Good morning. Good morning. It's 5 in the morning. 4 minutes past 5 in the morning. Oh. Oh. Oof. There's an old man, right? He's American, typical of America. You know what I mean? The old man says, children, right, 6-month-old babies are going to have the vaccination. Fucking injections, you know what I mean? Sick bastards. What a fucking crazy old man. That's like my mum. Fucking insane. Fucking crazy old bastard. USA. You know what I mean? Fucking sick old bastard. I've just told my mum. No, not my mum. My brother, Lee White. Lee White, he went to Red Lodge. He went to a special school because he's not well in the head. You know what I mean? And he gave me a black eye as well. He's a bit dodgy. I said to him, "Is mum dead yet? Because I'd like to know. I want to rest. You know what I mean? And get away from my mum because she's fucking evil."
According to international law, mercenaries are not recognized as combatants.
But they're not mercenaries. They served in the Ukrainian army.
Это должен определить суд.
This should be decided by a court.
You think the court's independent
Я
there?
убежден, что там независимый суд. А он считает,
I'm convinced there are independent courts there. Do you think your courts are independent?
And on UK-Russian relations, no expectation of an improvement.
Да вы знаете, по-моему, там уже нет никакого поля.
I don't think there's even any room for maneuver anymore, because both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss say openly that we should defeat Russia. We should force Russia to its knees. Go on then, do it.
Ну давайте, ставьте.
Okay, well, let's bring in Katerina Malofyeva, who is a freelance journalist in Kyiv. Katerina, you have spent a lot of time in the Donbass and also in the areas that are subject now to human rights focus and investigations, criticism there, and a lot of
human rights and freedom of
have been
speech.
committed in these areas. You also have direct contact, I understand, with a commander from the Ukrainian army in Severodonetsk, and we will get to that. But first, I wanted to know, what is your reaction to the words we've just heard there from Sergei Lavrov?
Good morning, Victoria. Well, you know, for a long time, Sergei Lavrov was actually kind of an example of quite a smart diplomat, because he was a mediator between the Kremlin and the West. And now, unfortunately, listening to his latest statements, it sounds like he's just a mouthpiece of propaganda, the Kremlin propaganda. Because in this short clip that we just listened to, I understood that he quite contradicts himself. He mentioned, he kind of questioned the report of the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights, and basically you cannot, as a person who spent quite some time in the Kyiv region, in the places like Borodyanka, Bucha, and Irpin, I saw the exhumation of the bodies. I spoke to people. I heard the testimonies of people who were during the occupation in the north of Kyiv, north and northwest of Kyiv. So it's quite difficult, you know, to stage such atrocities or stage a testimony. So when Lavrov questions this report, that means he kind of undermine and question the international law, the one that he appeals to in his response. And at the same time, when Steve questions, when Steve asked Mr. Lavrov about the death sentence of the British soldiers that were fighting legally in Ukraine because they signed a contract with the Ukrainian army. And Lavrov called them, not the combatants, but the mercenaries, and approved the decision of the separatist republic courts. He gives them legitimacy. He gives the legitimacy to the court. Meanwhile, Lavrov, I assume, hasn't been to Donetsk. He doesn't know how the court system operates there, right? When a person, a detainee, or the person who's in the trial is assigned a lawyer, an advocate that is imposed by the separatist authorities. So there is no fairness in this court. So it's quite contradictory, the statement of the foreign minister of Russia.
And as you say, you have seen evidence with your own eyes of Russian war crimes in those places. I wanted to get back to what I said about the communication that you have with Severodonetsk and what's happening in the east there. What is the situation on the ground, as far as you know?
The situation on the ground in Severodonetsk is quite bleak. I understand that we quite often have the parallels between Severodonetsk, Azot chemical plant, and Azovstal in Mariupol. Indeed, there are, according to the Ukrainian officials, there are still at least 500 civilians, including 40 children, inside of that plant, Azot plant in Severodonetsk. Authorities numerously tried and offered the remaining ones to leave, but unfortunately, some of them made the decision to stay, and this number is overall in the city up to 10,000 civilians. So that means that people either show the reluctance to leave, or they some of them support the pro-Russian side, pro-Russian, and they have pro-Russian inclinations. I'm indeed in touch with the deputy commander, one of the brigades that is fighting in Severodonetsk. Situation remains the same because partially the city is controlled by the Russians, partially it's controlled by the Ukrainians, but it's difficult also to draw the line because the fighting is constant and there is close battles going on in the city. So Ukrainian forces still have the access to the ammunition. The bridges, those 3 bridges that were destroyed, creates a difficulty for people, to be evacuated with the normal cars, but for the military vehicles, still possible to cross the river of Seversky Donetsk via in the narrow spots, in the narrow part of it.
Yes, but not entirely cut off at this stage. Katerina Malafieva, thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Now let's get some of the day's other news. London's Gatwick Airport has said it will limit the number of flights during the summer travel season in light of continuing staff shortages, a move that will force airlines to cancel some flights. Britain's second largest airport will cap flight numbers per day in July and August in order to avoid the chaos that we have seen during the half term, and also combat some of the cancellations that we've seen on the day from airlines. Justin Bieber has postponed his remaining US Justice World Tour dates amid his ongoing recovery from Ramsay Hunt syndrome. A post from the tour's official Instagram account said that the singer was upbeat and receiving the best medical care possible, while looking forward to returning to performing quickly later on this week. And Nepal is preparing to move its Everest base camp because global warming and human activity are making it unsafe. The camp, used by up to 1,500 people in the spring climbing season, is situated on the rapidly thinning glacier. Researchers say that meltwater destabilizes this glacier, and the climbers say crevasses are increasingly appearing at base camp while they're asleep. French officials are urging caution as record pre-summer heat wave spreads across the country from Spain. Authorities there are fighting forest fires on the 6th day of sweltering temperatures, and as Russell Trott reports, there's no sign of any let-up, at least until Sunday.
They're used to heat waves in Spain, just not this early in the summer season, and certainly not this hot. With the high temperatures comes the inevitable wildfires. Across the Pyrenees, they're banning outdoor public events.
Je veux signer dans la soirée.
I'm going to sign a decree which prohibits all outdoor public demonstrations or those held in non-air conditioned premises, said Fabien Berchiot, prefect of the Gironde. This measure will apply from tomorrow until the end of the heat wave. This is how they're keeping cool in some schools.
Comme ça, les enfants, ils sont beaucoup plus.
This headmistress says watering the playground will prevent her pupils from getting heat stroke. Whilst Portugal saw its hottest May since 1931, the French Weather Service said it was the earliest hot spell ever to hit the country. The hot zone is expected to move into Central Europe, Italy, the Alpine countries, and even the south of Germany. The scientists warn that as global temperatures rise over time, heat waves are predicted to become more frequent and intense and longer lasting, and their impacts more widespread. Russell Trott, BBC News.
Don't go anywhere, we've got plenty more coming up. Do stay with us here on BBC News.
Oh, I've got to get rid of the headache. Oh.
There was a bomb in the city centre. A code word known to be one used by the IRA was given. Army bomb experts were examining a suspect van when there was a huge explosion.
The South African Parliament has destroyed the foundation of apartheid by abolishing the Population Registration Act, which for 40 years forcibly classified each citizen according to race.
Just a day old, and the royal baby is tonight sleeping in his cot at home. Early this evening, the new prince was taken by his mother and father to their apartment in Kensington Palace.
Germany's parliament, the Bundestag, has voted by a narrow majority to move the seat of government from Bonn to Berlin. Berliners celebrated into the night, but the decision was greeted with shock in Bonn.
The real focus of attention today was Valentina Tereshkova, the world's first woman cosmonaut.
What do you think of the Russian woman in space? I think it's a wonderful achievement, and I think we might be able to persuade the right. It would be a good idea, if I could, to get her to go up there for a little while.
Hello and welcome back. A US congressional committee has heard yet more damning evidence about Donald Trump's apparent attempts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Witnesses described how Mr. Trump and his aides put pressure on the former Vice President Mike Pence not to validate Joe Biden's victory. Our North America correspondent Peter Bowes reports.
Another compelling hearing dissecting the events that led up to the January the 6th attack on the US Capitol. It focused on the role of the former Vice President Mike Pence, who was pressurized by Donald Trump to overturn the result of the 2020 election. The committee revealed testimony from senior members of the Trump administration that they believe is evidence that the former president knew his actions were against the law.
The former president wanted Pence to reject the votes and either declare Trump the winner or send the votes back to the states to be counted again. Mike Pence said no. He resisted the pressure. He knew it was illegal. He knew it was wrong. We are fortunate for Mr. Pence's courage.
The Capitol came under attack as Mr. Pence was certifying the election result, defying Donald Trump, who he'd spoken to earlier in the day.
There's a telephone conversation between the president and the vice president, is that correct?
Yes.
The conversation was pretty heated.
My memory, I remember hearing the word wimp. Either he called him a wimp. I don't remember if he said, "You are a wimp, you'll be a wimp." Wimp is the word I remember.
The committee was shown footage of rioters threatening to hang Mike Pence when it became known he'd refused to go along with the president's plan.
I'm telling you what, I'm hearing that Pence just caved.
No.
Is that true? I'm hearing reports that Pence caved. No, I'm telling you, if Pence caved, we're gonna drag through the streets.
At one point, the vice president was within 12 meters of the rioters. He was rushed out of the Senate chamber and spent several hours in a secure underground location. The committee was shown a tweet by Donald Trump when he knew the Capitol had been breached. He wrote, "Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. USA demands the truth." The testimony revealed during the hearing is notable because much of it comes from those in Mr. Trump's inner circle. A conservative federal judge and former advisor to Mike Pence, told the committee if the former president had got his way, there would have been dire consequences for the country.
That declaration of Donald Trump as the next president would have plunged America into what I believe would have been tantamount to a revolution.
He added that with Mr. Trump likely to try to regain the presidency in 2024, he and his allies and supporters were still a clear and present danger to American democracy. The committee says the next hearing will focus on efforts to apply pressure on Republican state officials to reverse election results which were lawful. In Bose,
France will decide this weekend whether to hand President Emmanuel Macron control of Parliament as he begins his second term as leader. The final round of voting for the 577 National Assembly seats takes place on Sunday. In many places, the runoff is a battle between President Macron's allies and candidates from a new left-wing alliance led by the far-left leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Our Paris correspondent, Lucy Williamson, has been talking to voters and candidates in the southern city of Toulouse.
France's far-left leader is turning up the heat on President Macron. His rally in Toulouse this week packed, even in 38-degree heat. Jean-Luc Mélenchon was knocked out of France's presidential election this year, but he's harnessed his supporters to a new alliance of green and left-wing parties that's threatening President Macron's allies in Sunday's parliamentary race.
For most of my life, I've been voting for less of two evils, and now finally we have, for the first time in my life, a big alliance on the left, and it's exciting.
The alliance finished neck and neck with Mr. Macron's party in the first round of voting. The president broke his silence ahead of Sunday's vote to warn against disorder in France. The alliance candidate in Toulouse says there's a difference between disorder and democracy.
Everyone needs to be reassured. We are the united left, so we're not going to bring in Soviet tanks. On the other hand, yes, we want real social change, with strong measures on purchasing power and...
Hello, France.
New
France is a nice
candidates are
place.
not expected to win control
It's better than
of the
America.
assembly,
America's fucked
but
up.
they could become the largest opposition group and block the president's own party from a majority. The race here in Toulouse shows just how far Jean-Luc Mélenchon's new alliance has come. At this point in the election 5 years ago, it was Mr. Macron's allies who were leading in most districts of this region. Now, it's Mr. Mélenchon's. Marie-Claire Constant is running against Mr. Picmal in Toulouse.
Mélenchon is very good. Yesterday he had a meeting here in Toulouse. He can speak for hours without any paper. What's kind of surprising is how people are buying it. Like they believe they're going to stay together, but the first day they're elected, of course they're going to split their ways.
Socialists, Greens and Communists disagree on several key issues with each other and with Mr. Mélenchon's far-left party. But their success in this alliance shows how unsettled French politics still is. In the 2 months since the presidential election here, the pendulum of opposition to President Macron has swung from the far right to the far left. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Toulouse.
And while artificial intelligence and robotics may be considered the future of medicine, Cape Town's Tygerberg Hospital is proving to be a hotbed of innovation. Robots are already being used in surgery. The BBC's Rumani Makizi has been going out there to find a little more.
This is the most advanced surgical robot on the continent. There are only 3 of these machines in the whole of Africa. Tiny instruments mimic the surgeon's hands with great precision and a wider range of motion than a human could ever manage.
This is the cutting edge of medical technology in South Africa. Now, these
Coffee. Coffee. Oh, yeah.
prostate operation on this patient. Now, the system has very nimble, sensitive arms, which can get to parts of the body which are difficult for surgeons to ordinarily reach.
This patient is expected to go home in a day after a 3-hour, minimally invasive surgery. faster recovery time is one of the major health benefits of this robot.
So it's helped us change to more precise surgery. It's the outcomes for patients when you come to quality of life and their longevity is much, much better. So yes, we can take out the cancer with a big open cut, lots of blood loss, versus if you do it with these robots, the cancer will come up, but how the rest of your life will be is so much better because we've been able to see nerves that previously we just could not see, and operate much more precisely. So there's way less blood loss, people are out of hospital much quicker.
The use of robots is not only limited to surgery, it's also used in improving the mental health of patients that have been in hospital for a long time. Juanita Solomons hasn't seen her family in 2 months. She uses robot Kanya to talk with her loved ones. Initially developed for COVID patients, Kanya has been repurposed for use in various hospital wards.
I think a video call is so much more powerful. And in South Africa, where a lot of patients are far from home, families aren't able to come in to visit, it really helps create that connection. And technology has allowed us to do that, which is amazing. And I think one of the good things that come out of COVID, I would never have done this before, but we were forced to do it, and now we're able to take that technology into our spaces going forward.
Research in the use of artificial intelligence in medicine is thriving in South Africa at the moment. An app that can identify TB is currently in the testing phase and could be a game changer in the fight against the disease once it launches next year. Vumanim Kize, BBC News, Cape Town.
Do stay with us here on The Business. We're going to be talking about the heat in the economy, inflation, rising prices, and also the heat here in the UK too.
Hello, Friday is set to bring the peak of the heat that has been building over the last couple of days, especially across England and Wales. On Thursday, Scotland and Northern Ireland stayed that bit cooler, but Cardiff got to 26, to the west of London a high of 29.5 degrees. But that's nothing compared with the temperatures we've seen in southwest Europe. This 40 in southern France on Thursday is a record breaker, the earliest point in the year that France has recorded a temperature of 40 degrees. And some of that extra heat will waft northwards on Friday into the southeast corner, highs of 33, always cooler further north and west. These are the starting temperatures for Friday. Quite warm and muggy out there at first thing. We've got outbreaks of rain that will be pushing down across parts of Scotland into Northern Ireland. And this is a bit of a dividing line, because behind this, we are into cooler, fresher conditions, quite windy as well. But ahead of our band of cloud rain, lots of hot sunshine, some mist and murk, perhaps for some western coast, but East Wales, the West Country into the Midlands, a good part of eastern England, the southeast, seeing temperatures into the high 20s or low 30s, likely to peak somewhere around 33 degrees, with very high UV levels in the southern parts. The sun is very, very strong at this time.
This is very strong. This is a joint of weed. A joint of weed I've found on the floor.
At this stage, not much rain on it, but to the north of it, we're into the cool air. To the south of it, still very warm and muggy. 18 likely to be the starting temperature in the centre of London on Saturday.
I'm not on the floor, it's on the coffee table.
In the south, but further north and west, something cooler and fresher.
Oh, it's so strong. Oh, my God.
Now, along the line of the weather front on Saturday, we will see some outbreaks of rain starting to develop.
Oh, look, yeah.
Heavy, possibly thundery. Also, some showers into the northwest of Scotland. Generally, quite a lot of sunshine across the
No, this is it. Now I feel loved up.
For most of us at this stage, in the high teens, but still 27 in London, maybe 29 across parts of southern and southeastern England. But by Sunday, the cooler air does win out. However, still some heavy thundery downpours in the south and especially the southwest. Elsewhere, a lot of dry weather, but largely northerly winds by this stage. So temperatures at best between 14 and 20 degrees.
Oh, okay, oh.
What does it take to become a top opera star like tenor Jonas Kaufmann and soprano Sonia Yoncheva? I find out about the rigors of training for aspiring opera singers and the unsung heroes who help make sure that the magic happens on the night. That's Take Me to the Opera with me, Zainab Badawi, Saturday at 1:30 on the BBC News Channel.
You may think you hear interviews with politicians all the time, but how often do you hear what makes them tick? I can't stand losing. Whether it's on the football pitch or in politics, everything is about the results. If you're on the pitch, you're on the pitch to win.
I think it's fair to say that when I was in my youth, I was a professional controversialist, and I liked exploring ideas and stirring things up.
Political Thinking with Nick Robinson, Saturday at 8:30 on the BBC News Channel.
And it's a really stark reminder of just how fierce the fighting was all along these roads into Kiev.
When prices rise this fast, it hits everyone.
It's like hustling the hardest you can hustle every day just to get through.
What happened here in Uvalde has reignited a nationwide debate about gun control.
Over the last year, NASA's Perseverance rover has revealed the planet as never seen before.
The BBC News Channel, more than just the headlines.
Hello, this is BBC News with the latest business headlines for viewers here in the UK and around the world. The highest interest rates in 13 years, but markets bet the Bank of England will have to go much higher to control soaring inflation. Recession fears stalk Wall Street as the sell-off resumes.
I'm going to say that later. I'm going to smack that later. Oh.
How the cost of living crisis is hitting people here in the UK. More than half tell a BBC survey that they're cutting back on groceries or skipping meals. And also coming up, the world's richest man and his plans to buy Twitter. Elon Musk tells staff people should be allowed to tweet pretty outrageous things as long as they're not illegal. Hello there, we start here in the UK, where the Bank of England has raised the cost of borrowing to its highest level in 13 years. The quarter of a percentage point rise to 1.25% was less than some were expecting, but financial markets are now betting that UK interest rates will have to rise a lot further from here to get control over soaring inflation. And the worry is, too steep a rise in borrowing costs could tip the economy into recession, and the warning signs are already here. Our economics editor Faisal Islam reports.
On the outskirts of Doncaster, a successful business, the Crown Hotel, grappling with energy, food prices and wages going up at the same time that household income is being squeezed. And now a relentless run of interest rate rises that hit some borrowers such as Craig on variable rates within hours.
We got a mortgage, on the hotel. And the very day Bank of England put the rates up, we get an email going up. I fail to see how hitting the business with higher rates of interest, which get passed on, it just adds on to all the other costs. It's a perfect storm. It's carnage.
It's almost like they're trying to temper a consumer boom, but do you see much sign of a consumer boom?
There's no consumer boom to temper.
Outside the Bank of England, things seem bright, but inside the bank's job is somewhat less sunny. To bring down rampant rises in prices, or at least stop them lasting for years rather than months. And that means making the cost of borrowing for households and businesses more expensive, slowing the economy. So the base rate, which is the foundation of costs of credit cards, loans and mortgages, was lifted again to a 13-year high of 1.25%. But as you can see from the charts, even at these post-financial crisis highs, it's still a rather low rate of interest by historic standards. And this is why rates are going up, because inflation, already at a 40-year high of 9%, isn't just heading for double digits. Now the bank thinks it could hit 11% in autumn as energy prices and sterling's fall push inflation yet higher.
Oh.
Of course, where it is very difficult is the
That's
balance
crazy.
between bringing inflation down and tipping the
Yeah, I'm live on YouTube, right?
I think it's quite
Okay.
possible that we will see a period of contracting out.
Just passing on the news.
So off target is the rise in inflation that Governor Andrew Bailey has had to write a letter of explanation to the Chancellor. It's not just on this road in Peterlee in County Durham where people are looking for explanations too.
I would say that every single area is going to struggle. So even the better off areas around the local villages, they're still going to struggle as much as everyone else is. It's not just a one category of person.
And can you see people cutting back and spending less?
I think they're going to have to.
The evidence from here on the ground and increasingly across the economy raises a fundamental question about how many rises from Andrew Bailey or anyone at the Bank of England are now required. The crushing effects of the cost of living crisis is already slowing the economy down markedly. Back in Doncaster, the last straw. Using one instead of two in the hotel bar's cocktails is one response to very high inflation. Even though the economy is now likely to be shrinking, the Bank of England is still on course for further rises in interest rates, a soft landing far from certain. Faisal Islam, BBC News.
BBC News. Oh my God.
Rising interest rates could cause a recession here in the UK and Europe and in the United States have sent stock markets plunging again. As you can see here, Wall Street has resumed the sell-off that's been going on pretty much all week with the exception of a little bit of relief on Wednesday. The Dow closing below 30,000, as you can see up there. It's lowest in more than a year. Let's bring in Michael Hewson, who is the Chief Market Analyst at CMC Markets. Now, Michael, there has been some criticism in some quarters that the bank has been a little bit flat-footed on this. I mean, what do you think? Have they undercooked the goose?
I think they've been caught very flat-footed, Victoria. They may have been the first central bank to start hiking interest rates, but you've only really got to look at the effects that food and energy price inflation are having on UK consumer spending. The pound is down 10% over the course of the past 12 months.
Wow. To be honest, what we got to look at is
into the UK economy because all of commodities are priced in dollars. So if you take
families
example,
suffering.
Families
suffering.
are up $120
Yeah.
a barrel. 10 years ago,
I help families. I help children. I help old people.
A barrel. The current prices are £95 a barrel. You're seeing that at pumps.
That's my history, you know.
Commodity prices, and to my mind, the Bank of England is on the horns of a dilemma. Do they hike aggressively and cause pain to businesses, or do they hike aggressively?
NHS, they misdiagnosed me, right? Honestly, they misdiagnosed me, right? As schizophrenic bipolar disorder, and they locked me up for 18 years in and out of section units. Right? NHS owe me millions. They're evil, nasty people now. NHS, don't go near the NHS.
A lot more aggressively yesterday.
But you know what? The thing is, though, Michael, and we talked about the depreciation there of sterling. A lot of this has got to do with the strength of the dollar, and that is not with the gift of the MPC, that the monetary policy.
Yeah, the police are disgusting.
To do anything about.
They're really rubbish.
They're sort of caught, aren't they? But in a difficult position because their job is to control inflation, not to really control the currency, because there are many factors that affect the value of sterling. So. Are there any viable alternatives to this, or are we going to see some kind of run on sterling in the future?
No, I mean, I don't think we're going to see a run on sterling, but I don't think that the Bank of England's guidance has helped in this regard. It's been fairly muddled. I mean, take yesterday.
Fairly muddled. Example. Yeah, NHS and police are muddled. Yeah, they're muddled.
Evidence that inflation was running out of control. They then.
I'll see you later.
Their outlook for inflation from 10.
Oh, come here.
I mean, the last time inflation was at these sorts of levels, interest rates were around about 8 or 9%. You know, so for me, I think they come across as very, very muddled. The markets really don't know what to make of how they're going to shape policy going forward. And I think expectations.
This is Twitter.
Rise in the base rate between now and the end of the year are wildly optimistic. I think we could see another. Say, for example, 50 to 75 basis points, but the Bank of England have never raised rates by more than 25 basis points in the last 25 years, and I don't see any evidence that they're likely to do so in the future.
Okay, Michael, thank you. We're going to leave it there. Michael Hewson from CMC Markets. Well, there's no relief, certainly, of those inflation pressures because the price of gas has actually soared this week after the Russian energy giant Gazprom slashed the amount it's supplying to Europe. Moscow is blaming technical problems with the Nord Stream pipeline, but it's inevitably being accused of trying to pressure the West into forcing up prices. Now, the benchmark price for gas at the moment is already up more than 400% over the last year. Let's bring in Nathan Piper, who's the head of oil and gas research at Investec in Edinburgh. So Russia here blaming a technical problem for dips in supply. Does the industry believe that?
I'm not sure the industry is completely convinced, particularly those off-takers in Europe who have seen supplies being reduced over time, and indeed a number of countries being cut off from supplies from Russia. So no, I don't think they're fully convinced. I think the extra tension yesterday that in suggestions from Russia that they might have to shut down the whole Nord Stream pipeline, which is the main pipeline from Russia to Germany, really spooked gas markets even further.
Now, we have seen, and do stay with me on this thought, we have seen a severe heat wave across Europe. I'm thinking of Spain and France at the moment. What impact is that having on energy demand right now and the potential for things like hydropower to service that demand?
Well, the increased heat means more air conditioning and requires more electricity. So that is a further source of demand. But I think the key issue here around demand is actually the winter. But what's happening at the moment in Europe is that Europe is doing quite a good job of attracting LNG volumes and refilling storage now in the summer ahead of the winter. But I think the combination of the Freeport LNG outage announced a few weeks ago, and that lasting for the next few months, on top of what the Gazprom will be announcing this week, is seeing gas prices double in the past 7 days, and is also impacting the ability for Europe to store gas now, literally whilst the sun shines, ahead of winter. And I think that's what's causing prices to move up. And I think that's the tension here.
In your view, how realistic is the prospect of gas rationing in the winter?
I think following the events of this week, it's a lot more likely than it was. I think people shouldn't get too alarmed. And gas rationing will apply really to industrial consumers rather than to domestic users. But if Russia decides to turn off infrastructure, major bits of infrastructure like Nord Stream 1, then it will exacerbate what is already a very tight situation. I mean, gas prices are at 3 and 4 times the 10-year average. We're seeing unprecedented gas prices at this time of year, when typically gas prices are low, and when, as I say, you can then look to fill your storage ahead of the winter. So we're in very volatile and worrying times.
Nathan Piper, we certainly are. Thank you very much for your time today. Have a great weekend. Now let's turn our attentions to the world's richest man, Elon Musk, and his $44 billion plan to buy Twitter. He's been holding a video meeting with staff to address some of their concerns. He wants to increase freedom of speech on the platform, lifting the ban on Donald Trump. Just one example. He told staff people should be allowed to say pretty outrageous things so long as they are legal. But there wasn't much detail on whether this deal is actually going to go through. Michelle Fleury has more.
Twitter employees finally got a chance to meet face-to-face with a man who may soon be their boss. And Elon Musk wasted no time getting his message across. Asked why he loves Twitter, the CEO of the electric car maker Tesla, well, he gave an answer that helped explain why he chose to pursue the company, saying, "Some people use their hair to express themselves. I use Twitter." Now, on the topic of free speech and content moderation, Mr. Musk said people should be free to say what they want, so long as it's legal. But he said that that was not the same thing as promoting that speech. And for those worried about losing their jobs, well, he didn't offer much reassurance, saying the company needs to get healthy and that exceptional employees had nothing to fear. As for his ambitions for the company, he wants to grow Twitter's user base to 1 billion active users. No small feat. The social media platform had 229 million daily active users, according to its most recent quarterly results. Mr. Musk's meeting with Twitter staff came on the same day that a group of employees at another company he owns, SpaceX, denounced the flamboyant billionaire's behavior as a distraction in a letter they sent to executives.
Okay, let's get some reaction from Daniel Ives, who's the managing director at equity research at Wedbush Securities over in New York. Dan, do you think by having this appearance and doing this video call, he may have actually raised more questions than he answered?
I think this was the wrong call at the wrong time, because ultimately there was a lack of answers, and I think it was a clear change in terms of tone from Musk, because I think employees wanted to hear some sort of comfort. Instead, they just had more questions. Layoffs are clearly on the horizon, and this just continues to be a circus show, and that's why this was another head scratcher for Musk to do this call at this time.
Head scratcher, I love it. Twitter staff employees have largely been scratching their heads, haven't they? Left in the dark over the deal and what it might mean for them and their futures. This was their first opportunity to see the man, even if he was on a video call.
What are they worried about? What are the main questions that seem to be coming up?
Yeah, and he came on 10 minutes late, right? And I think, the big questions are, is he going to close down headquarters in San Francisco, move more to Austin? Are significant layoffs on the horizon? And then fundamentally, does he really want to do the deal? Because right now, I think there's a 60% chance he still tries to walk away from the deal and likely fight Twitter board in terms of the courts. And I think these are all questions you can see by where the stocks trade. And I think that's the questions employees have. And clearly Musk didn't have the answers. I think it just adds more uncertainty, especially for Twitter employees.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he was struggling with the tech. Who knows? I mean, it does happen to us all. Do we know where we are with this takeover? You said 60%. I mean, where have you got that number from?
Look, I mean, our view is that, the chances are most likely he still tries to walk. And I think the stock and Wall Street is telling you that in terms of what they believe. I think the bot fake account issue, as they go through the data, that could be a renegotiation potentially in the $42 to $45 area. But right now, the chance of 54.20, the original bid happening, I think that's out the window. But right now for Musk, especially with all the pressure on Tesla stock, the situation's changed dramatically from what this deal initially looked like in April.
Daniel Ive, thanks so much for your time and taking us through your thoughts there. Now, do stay with us here on BBC News. Still to come, hot under the collar. What are your rights?
I'm building another joint.
Heatwave?
Yeah.
There was a bomb in the city centre. A code word known to be one used by the IRA was given. Army bomb experts were examining a suspect van when there was a huge explosion.
The South African Parliament has destroyed the foundation of apartheid by abolishing the Population Registration Act, which for 40 years forcibly classified each citizen according to race.
Just a day old, and the royal baby is tonight sleeping in his cot at home. Early this evening, the new prince was taken by his mother and father to their apartment in Kensington Palace.
Germany's parliament, the Bundestag, has voted by a narrow majority to move the seat of government from Bonn to Berlin. Berliners celebrated into the night, but the decision was greeted with shock in Bonn.
The real focus of attention today was Valentina Tereshkova, the world's first woman cosmonaut.
What do you think of the Russian woman in space? I think it's a wonderful achievement, and I think we might be able to persuade the wife. It would be a good idea if I could to get her to go up there for a little while.
Hello, welcome back. This is BBC News. Just a reminder of our headlines. Ukraine's President Zelensky pledges that his country is ready to put in the work to become a full member of the European Union. And the US Capitol investigation hears that rioters demanded that the former Vice President Mike Pence be dragged out of the building. Now let's return to our top story, the soaring cost of living. And a survey commissioned by the BBC, it's found that people here in the UK are cutting back on food and car journeys in order to save money. More than half of the 4,000 people spoken to earlier this month, 56%, said they'd bought fewer groceries, and the same proportion have been skipping meals. 8 out of 10 people now say they're worried about rising living costs. Emma Simpson has this report.
Look at us, Mummy! Summertime's here, but for many, the living is far from easy. There's plenty to spend cash on at this Birmingham park, a family favourite.
No, I don't want one, thank you. No,
But many are cutting back.
Go to the pub less, just to save them where I can, and just probably just have a few cans at home instead.
And you put the oven on, rather than just put one thing in there. You do several things at the same time.
We have to, if we have to survive in this climate, in this situation.
At least the park is free. You've just got to get there.
The diesel is absolutely crippling me. But just my company, I paid £1.93 a litre. And compared to what it used to be, I can't go out as much as it used to, not a chance.
Using the car a bit less, maintaining it a bit less as well. And
yeah, looking for the yellow stickers at the supermarket.
The problem with that is that
Everywhere you go, there are folk wondering how to make the sums add up.
but we never had to watch what we spent in terms of on a weekly basis. Now we do it on a daily basis. So
A few miles down the road, this school has decided to make school uniform and PE kit free for all new children moving up from primary in the autumn.
The basics of clothing and feeding your child, families are finding that challenging. I think, it can just be a throwaway comment where just last week a parent said to me, at least I don't have to have the heating on anymore.
So the pressure has definitely gone up.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, we need another ball. Her pupils know about the pressures too.
We're not spending as much money as we need to, like going out, but my pocket money hasn't. So I'm happy for that.
Making sure the lights are off, turning the plugs off at the switches.
Having to say no to some stuff because they can't afford all the things that I want.
try and have the good times, have things out, stays out, but try and keep the cost of those a bit smaller.
I just think Rebecca's daughter Jess will get the free uniform for September. It all helps.
It just means that in the summer we're going to be able to do a few extra little trips out. So yeah, things that we probably couldn't have done if we'd had to fork out for the uniform.
A glimpse of the cutback economy. For many, it's now about staying afloat and preparing for more turbulent times ahead. Emma Simpson, BBC News, Birmingham.
Now, finally, with temperatures set to soar as high as 34 degrees in the UK today, it's actually going to be hotter here than in Jamaica and the Maldives. For the first time in its history, Royal Ascot will allow gentlemen to remove their ties. And of course, it's not just here in Britain. There's a heat wave, a continued heat wave across Spain and France, and temperatures there even higher. We're looking at something like 40 degrees plus. Let's bring in Anne Franco, who's the CEO of the Chartered Management Institute. Anne, is it ever technically too hot to work here in Britain?
Well, good morning. Actually, there is no legal maximum temperature when it's too hot to work. The law simply states that the temperature has to be reasonable, but it doesn't give an exact temperature. So the simple answer is no.
How reasonable would it be, therefore, to say, I can't do it? And what are your rights if you say, this isn't reasonable for me, I don't want to do it, I'm off?
Well, actually, it's in the employer's interest to keep employees comfortable. When you're too hot in an office or anywhere, your productivity goes down, and it's important that people do behave differently in hot weather. So, for example, drinking a lot of water, taking more breaks, avoiding moving around unnecessarily, and relaxed dress codes. Like we heard, you don't need to wear your tie at Ascot. That's a good example of adapting to hot conditions.
I wonder if there's any data on that, just how much work actually gets done when the temperature starts to rise.
Well, it's interesting. I think there was a study by NASA, I believe, that showed that productivity does drop when temperatures rise. So there is an incentive for all employers to keep things reasonable and, for example, to invest in air conditioning. And in fact, in countries where air conditioning is very common, such as the US, where most offices do have it, people actually go into the office when it's hot to keep cool.
Now, what guidance is there for businesses here in the UK that almost certainly won't have air conditioning, because we don't normally experience 34-degree heat, for how to cope with the heat and keep people comfortable and therefore in the office?
Well, you can do a number of things. You can rent portable air conditioning units. Of course, they do use energy, and as we know, energy prices are increasing. But giving people frequent breaks, making sure you have a lot of water to hand, cold water to hand for people, and relaxing the dress code, allowing them to wear shorts, for example. These are all things that you can do to keep employees comfortable. Opening windows, to allow a cross draft, that's also ventilation, that's also important.
I wonder how much hybrid working may have helped the situation today. How many people will just be working from home instead?
Well, of course, if you don't need to go on a hot, sticky commute, that can be very helpful. Avoiding crowded and enclosed spaces that we often encounter on the tube, etc. So hybrid working can indeed help because people can make themselves comfortable in their own homes and don't have to travel in the heat.
And Franca, thank you very much for your time. Really interesting. And I hope you managed to stay cool today.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, we did give you a quick flash of the markets, but I want to give you a little bit more to show you what's going on. It is not a pretty sight. World stocks on track for their worst week since the pandemic meltdown of March 2020. Investors are worrying about the growth of many countries around the world in the face of global rate hikes. Except in Japan, where policy settings were kept easy and the yen actually fell. The Bank of Japan stuck with its strategy of pinning 10-year yields near zero at its policy meeting, in stark contrast with what's going on in the rest of the world. Thank you very much for your time and your company today. I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Hello, Friday is set to bring the peak of the heat that has been building over the last couple of days, especially across England and Wales. On Thursday, Scotland and Northern Ireland stayed that bit cooler, but Cardiff got to 26, to the west of London, a high of 29.5 degrees. But that's nothing compared with the temperatures we've seen in southwest Europe. This 40 in southern France on Thursday is a record breaker, the earliest point in the year that France has recorded a temperature of 40 degrees. And some of that extra heat will waft northwards on Friday into the southeast corner, highs of 33, always cooler further north and west. These are the starting temperatures for Friday. Quite warm and muggy out there at first thing. We've got outbreaks of rain that'll be pushing down across parts of Scotland into Northern Ireland. And this is a bit of a dividing line, but because behind this, we are into cooler, fresher conditions, quite windy as well. But ahead of our band of cloud and rain, lots of hot sunshine, some mist and murk, perhaps for some western coast, but East Wales, the West Country into the Midlands, a good part of eastern England, the southeast, seeing temperatures into the high 20s or low 30s, likely to peak somewhere around 33 degrees, with very high UV levels in the southern parts. The sun is very, very strong at this time of year. Now, through Friday nights, this band of cloud continues to sink southwards. A weak weather front at this stage, not much rain on it, but to the north of it, we're into the cool air. To the south of it, still very warm and muggy. 18 likely to be the starting temperature in the centre of London on Saturday morning. So you can see that warm air clinging on in the south. But further north and west, something cooler and fresher to the north of this weather front. Now, along the line of the weather front on Saturday, we will see some outbreaks of rain starting to develop. Some of this rain could be heavy, possibly thundery. Also, some showers into the northwest of Scotland. Generally, quite a lot of sunshine across the northern half of the UK. Temperatures for most of us at this stage in the high teens, but still 27 in London, maybe 29 across parts of southern and southeastern England. But by Sunday, the cooler air does win out. However, still some heavy thundery downpours in the south and especially the southwest. Elsewhere, a lot of dry weather, but largely northerly winds by this stage. So temperatures at best between 14 and 20 degrees.
This is incredible. Ethan is adrift in an out-of-body experience, suspended in a chorus-filled cloud surf, floating in a sea of hands. Because this song is bigger than gravity. Be there without being there. Glastonbury from next Friday on BBC iPlayer and Sounds.
Welcome to my house.
Who's the real homeowner?
My instinct is that it's over in 3.
And who's just faking?
Do you know where we keep the collar for Hamish?
We don't, because it is.
I feel like that reveals quite a lot. That was good.
This Is My House continues tonight at 8:30 on BBC One and iPlayer.
Welcome to Hungry For It.
Yes, 10 hungry cooks, one life-changing prize, with food and flavour on another level.
This gave me the tea. It made me dance, it made me happy.
Yeah. Brand new Hungry For It continues Tuesday at 8 on BBC Three and iPlayer.
Everyone growing up wants to drive a lorry.
Let's say yours.
Here we go. You're in my beer, you clone! That's yours! That's mine!
All new Top Gear continues Sunday at 8 on BBC One and iPlayer.
How much of my culture has Britain absorbed? All this music, art, all this creativity. I feel immensely proud of who we are and proud of where we've come from.
Lenny Henry's Caribbean
You're a wanker.
starts Wednesday at 9 on BBC Two.
You're not from fucking UK, you're from Africa or some shit. You're fucking brown. Fuck off.
So what's it happened? We need to get ahead. We need to start talking to people who know more about this than we do.
Sherwood continues Monday at 9 on BBC One and iPlayer.
Well, how did you sleep? Me too. It's warm already. Good morning. Welcome to BBC One. It's Friday, the 17th of June, and it's 6 o'clock.
Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Charlie States and Nadia Munchausen.
Our headlines today: the Bank of England warns inflation could rise to 11% this year. We look at the real cost of living, what we're cutting back on.
People are spending less on food, having fewer days out and making fewer journeys as those cost of living pressures really take hold. I'll be looking at the tough decisions so many of us are making about what we spend every day.
President Zelensky says Ukraine is closer than ever to the EU, with senior officials in Brussels expected to recommend it as a formal candidate later today.
It was a scandal that shook America and brought down a president. 50 years on from Watergate, echoes still ring around Washington.
Good morning. A great start to the US Open golf for Rory McIlroy, one of those players who's refused to join the breakaway Sally Back Tour. He's just one shot off the lead in Brookline, looking to win his first major in 8 years.
Good morning. The heat wave in the south is likely to peak today. We could see temperatures of 33 or even 34 Celsius. A different picture further north. It's cooler, it's fresher with some outbreaks of rain. So a really mixed picture in terms of the weather. I'll bring you a full forecast coming up shortly.
Good morning, it's Friday, the 17th of June. Today on Breakfast, we're looking in detail at the impact of the soaring cost of living, with the Bank of England warning that the rate of inflation could hit 11% later this year.
The huge rise is being driven in part by events taking place hundreds of miles away from Ukraine, but the pinch is already being felt right here in the UK.
BBC News has asked 4,000 adults across the UK how they're feeling about the cost of living. 8 out of 10 said they're worried about it, with around 2/3 saying it's affecting their mental health. More than half.
Yeah, fucking right.
They're buying to cook at home, and nearly
Fucking
2/3,
O2 took the piss.
64%, are going out to eat in pubs or restaurants less often.
Petrol and household energy bills are clearly a big source of worry. Half of the people we asked are using their car less frequently, while 7 out of 10 say they've turned off appliances in their homes to save energy.
With prices rising at their fastest rate for 40 years, household budgets appear to be tightening, as our business correspondent Emma Simpson reports.
Look at hers, Mummy! Summertime's here, but for many, the living is far from easy. There's plenty to spend cash on at this Birmingham park, a family favourite.
No, I don't want one, thank you. No,
But many are cutting back.
Going to the pub less, just to save them where I can, and probably just have a few cans at home instead.
When you put the oven on, rather than just put one thing in there, you do several things at the same time.
We have to, if we have to survive in this climate, in this situation.
At least the park is free. You've just got to get there.
The diesel is absolutely crippling me. But just my company, I paid £1.93 a litre, and compared to what it used to be, I can't go out as much as I used to, not a chance.
Using the car a bit less, maintaining it a bit less as well, and yeah, looking for the yellow stickers at the supermarket.
The problem with that is that
Everywhere you go, there are folk wondering how to make the sums add up.
we never had to watch what we spent in terms of on a weekly basis. Now we're doing it on a daily basis. So
A few miles down the road, this school has decided to make school uniform and PE kit free for all new children moving up from primary in the autumn.
The basics of clothing and feeding your child, families are finding that challenging. I think, it can just be a throwaway comment where just last week a parent said to me, at least I don't have to have the heating on anymore.
So the pressure has definitely gone up.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, we need another bowl. Her pupils know about the pressures too.
We're not spending as much money as we need to, like going out, but like my pocket money hasn't, so I'm happy for that.
Making sure the lights are off, turning the plugs off at the switches.
Having to say no to some stuff because they can't afford all the things that I want.
Try and have the good times, have things out, stays out, but try and keep the cost of those a bit smaller.
I just think Rebecca's daughter Jess will get the free uniform for September, and it all helps.
It just means that in the summer we're going to be able to do a few extra little trips out. So yeah, things that we probably couldn't have done if we'd had to fork out for the uniform.
A glimpse of the cutback economy. For many, it's now about staying afloat and preparing for more turbulent times ahead. Emma Simpson, BBC News, Birmingham.
Well, Ben's just outside our studios here in Salford. Ben, you're going to be talking quite a bit this morning about things people feeling in their homes and their daily lives about the cost of living.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that's affecting the decisions people are making every single day. And, on a gorgeous day like this, the temptation is to go out and spend, do things, buy things. But the reality is people have less money to be able to do what they normally would. And we're hearing about the cutbacks. We'll be looking at the decisions people are making about what they spend on food, for example, and what they're spending, how they're saving money when it comes to travel and transport. And with people saying they're socialising, they're going out less, the impact that's having on some of the businesses, the hospitality businesses, the bars and restaurants around here. Also have some really practical advice for you about how you can save money. Just to give you one example now, buying in season is a very, very good way to save money. A lot of food is getting more expensive, but these peaches, for example, because they're now in season, they've gone down in price from £10 a kilo to £4 a kilo. That's some other advice for you on ways that you can save on your weekly shop as well. That's all coming up a little later in the programme.
Ben, thanks very much. More with you later on.
Let's bring you up to date with other news. Ukraine's bid to join the European Union is expected to move one step forward today. Senior officials in Brussels look likely to approve the country as an official candidate for membership.
In his nightly address, President Zelensky said Ukraine had never been closer to the EU. Comes after leaders of Germany, France and Italy used a visit to Kyiv to announce their support for the country's application for candidacy. Azida Moshin has this report.
Ukraine's president called it a truly historic day, describing a visit to Kyiv by some of Europe's most powerful leaders. From France, Germany and Italy, three of the Eurozone's largest economies, as well as Romania. And while President Zelensky has grown accustomed to receiving politicians who wish to see the war firsthand, this time he had clear demands, more weapons, and shoring up support for Ukraine's candidacy to the European Union.
Ukraine has felt the support of four powerful European states at once, and in particular support for our movement to the European Union. Italy, Romania, France and Germany are with us.
But up until this visit, President Zelensky had criticized these leaders, arguing they weren't taking a tough enough stance with Russia. President Macron was accused of being too soft with his words, and Chancellor Scholz too slow in cutting off economic ties. Perhaps that's why they were taken to Irpin, a town decimated by Russian shelling. At the end of the visit, France, Germany and Italy's leaders announced their support for Ukraine's immediate candidate status.
All four of us, we support the status of Ukraine's candidacy for immediate accession to the European Union. This status will be accompanied, we have all said, by a roadmap, and also implies the consideration of the Western Balkan states and neighbouring states, in particular Moldova.
Those caveats signalled the long road ahead for Ukraine's accession to the bloc. All 27 member states must agree to its candidacy, and then negotiations would begin on what reforms would be needed. All this must happen without riling the Balkan states who've been queuing up to join for years. Azadeh Mashiri, BBC News.
Well, let's speak to our correspondent Joe Inwood, who's in Kiev for us now. So this was an important visit, Joe. Just tell us what we can take away from it.
That I think the levels of diplomatic support that maybe there'd been concerns weren't there in every European state really do seem to be rock solid. We got a united front here from the three biggest national leaders in Europe. They spoke of the barbarism of Russia's invasion, the fact that they had evidence of war crimes here. And I think the Ukrainians will view this as a really, really successful trip. But it's not just about the sounds that are coming out. There are real political, diplomatic decisions that are going to come as a consequence. We've got that decision on candidacy status. And I think the fulsome support, the really fulsome support we got from the four leaders here yesterday will give them great confidence in that. But there is another issue, and there has always been another issue. Of course, EU candidacy is an issue for the long run, but there are immediate concerns, really pressing concerns on the battlefield here. And I know there will have been talks, there have been discussions about military hardware, because the Ukrainians say they are getting increasingly desperate about the state of their military hardware here. They need more equipment, they need more advanced systems. So I think as well as the diplomatic support, they're going to be hoping they're getting more military support, and they're going to be getting it soon.
Joe, thank you very much.
New research suggests the Omicron variant of coronavirus is less likely to leave patients with long COVID than the previous Delta variant. King's College London looked at data from nearly 100,000 people logging symptoms on an app. Little more than 4% of those infected during the Omicron wave registered long COVID symptoms, compared to 10% during Delta.
The first ever Women's Health Ambassador for England has been appointed, a role aimed at helping to close the gender gap in healthcare.
Dame Leslie Regan will take up the position after more than 4 decades working in the sector. She says she intends to use her position to address the inequalities that exist across society.
I think the emphasis I really would like to have is on the things that affect most women all the time, because often they are not talked about. And that's where I think we have the biggest morbidity, if you like, a waste of resources. So many women leaving school or their education or their workplace because they can't cope with their periods, or they're finding the menopause too stressful. So we must do things that are going to actually allow women to get on with their lives.
Now, for many of us, they're the bane of our online lives, the maddening pop-up boxes, which ask for permission to store cookies or small amounts of personal data every time we visit a new website. Well, they could be on the way out. Government has published new proposals which will allow us to set blanket permission for all websites. They're part of the data reform bill, which will also increase fines for companies which bombard us with nuisance calls and text messages.
Everest Base Camp could soon be moving to a new home, excuse me, after officials said global warming and human activity are making the current location unsafe. The site, which is used by up to 1,500 people in the spring climbing season, is currently on a glacier that's melting. The government in Nepal said a new camp will be found at a lower altitude.
Time now is 12 minutes past 6, so Sarah's got the weather details for us today, and fairly obviously quite a lot of attention on how it's going to be. There's a lot of variety across the UK, isn't there?
Yes, there certainly is. Good morning to you, Charlie and Naga, and good morning to you at home too. Yes, I'm up here on the roof of New Broadcasting House this morning. Glorious start to the day here. But we are certainly going to see a day of weather extremes. Hot and humid again. We're likely to see the peak of that heat wave in the south, but it's not the same picture across all of the UK, because we do have a front that's moving in from the north. So that's bringing us some cooler conditions across Scotland, Northern Ireland, breezy and fresher here, but certainly in the south, much of England and Wales, hot sunshine, and it is feeling humid really from the word go. So rain this morning across Northern Ireland into central Scotland too. Sunshine and 1 or 2 showers to the north of that, but further south, lots of hot sunshine. In fact, we could see temperatures today between about 24 to 33, even 34 degrees down towards the southeast. Cooler conditions to the north of that front, around about 15 to 21 for Scotland and for Northern Ireland. A bit more cloud lapping in to the coast of Wales and the southwest of England at times. Overnight, the cloud shifts its way a bit further south. Most of the rain fizzles out, but still hot and humid in the south, with temperatures still in the high teens again. But further north, we're seeing fresher conditions moving in. Now, tomorrow then, that front reinvigorates. So some heavy rain around, perhaps some thunderstorms through parts of Wales, into the Midlands and Lincolnshire too. Still, though, we're in the hot and humid air to the south of that, so 28 or 29 degrees once again. Cooler and fresher conditions to the north of that front on Saturday. But if you're not a fan of the heat, the humidity and the very strong sunshine that we've got with us this time of year, you'll probably be pleased to hear that by Sunday, we're all going to be in that cooler and fresher air. So the heat wave really peaking out there today and then gradually turning a touch cooler over the next couple of days. Charlie and Naga.
Sarah, thanks very much. See you later on.
It's 14 minutes past 6. Now, today marks 50 years since a break-in in Washington, D.C. kicked off one of the biggest scandals in U.S. political history.
The plot was ultimately linked to President Richard Nixon's White House, exposed a broader culture of corruption, abuse of power, and dirty tricks.
Jill Wine-Banks was on the special prosecutors team investigating the cover-up. She's been remembering what happened.
This is the place where on June 17th, 1972, 5 men broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters and were caught. And they were caught for a variety of reasons, all of them really stupid, but they were caught red-handed, and they had on them evidence that linked them to the White House. The White House denied any involvement, said it was a third-rate burglary.
I had no prior knowledge of the Watergate break-in.
And so the press kept after it, and then our office was established, the Office of the Watergate Special Prosecutor. And then we started using the grand jury to get evidence. The Watergate hearings took place over 51 days and riveted the nation.
This was the biggest day of the Watergate hearings yet.
Literally, almost all of America, about 85% of American households watched the Watergate hearings. And they watched at least 30 hours of hearings.
The committee will come to order. Stand up, raise your right hand.
John Dean was the narrator of the full story.
I began by telling the president that there was a cancer growing on the presidency, and if the cancer was not removed, the president himself would be killed by it.
His memory was terrific. He was an insider who said, I'm guilty. I did these bad things, and I know because I was at these meetings, and he documented everything. I mean, he proved to be an amazing witness.
No comment at all right now.
The media landscape in 1972 around the world was very different than it is today. There was no social media, there was no cable, there was no Fox and MSNBC. All the networks in America had the same facts, and people believed them. People trusted the media. It persuaded them of what was happening, and they turned on a very popular president. We were very unified after Watergate. Democrats and Republicans wanted Richard Nixon to resign. They saw the corruption.
January 6th was the culmination of an attempted coup.
I think one of the similarities between these scandals is that, as one of President Trump's employees said, the fish stinks from the head.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
Both of them believed the president is above the law.
I welcome this kind of examination because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
I think the January 6th committee is facing a lot of challenges. They must prove all the elements because January 6th was terrible, but it's not enough. I am sure that it will end with proposals for legislation to prevent future bad acts, maybe changes to the Electoral College Act that make it airtight so that it can't happen again. It's hard to apply the lessons of Watergate to the current event, but clearly we learned that facts matter, and we learned that holding people accountable matters. In the Watergate case, justice prevailed, and that is something that I would hope we could see again.
18 minutes past 6 is the time. Let's take a look at today's papers. The Guardian is paying tribute to British journalist Don Phillips, who was killed in the Amazon. The paper says he died trying to warn the world about the war on nature and that his work must be continued.
Let's have a look at the Telegraph reporting on calls from the AA for charges for congestion, parking and clean air zones to be waived during next week's rail strikes.
The Metro front page carries a photograph of Beyonce in Vogue magazine, where she's been talking about the release of her new album, the first since 2016.
And one of the most read stories on the BBC News website is this article about Tom Hanks, who reportedly shouted at fans to back off after his wife Rita tripped while being surrounded as they left a restaurant in New York.
A couple of stories to bring you on the inside pages. I quite like this story, although this isn't. This is more that watch it but don't do it. A Carpy went to Brendan Mills' home. He's in Brisbane, and as he was at home, he realised that there was a woman sitting in his car at home, obviously trying to steal it, his red Volkswagen Polo. And she'd broken into the house before, earlier, and she'd showered and changed into clothes inside. It was all very odd. And then, so what he did is when he saw this woman in his car, he got into his forklift truck.
I'm going outside in a minute.
Handily in the garden.
Yeah.
Lifted the car up in the air with the thief inside, 2 meters in the air, and it was such that the forks under the truck meant that she couldn't open the door. So then he called the police.
Because she's up in the air.
She's up in the air, trapped inside of a car that she was trying to steal. So then he called the police. Police came down, the car eventually lowered, she was arrested, charged with burglary, unlawful use of a motor vehicle. Police are saying, no, don't take the law into your own hands. But if you have a handy forklift truck...
Yeah, moral of the story is have a forklift truck available at all times. In the obituary section of this Daily Telegraph, fantastic story here about Michael Peter Scott Morgan. Some people are familiar with his story. Who died age 64, who was an expert in robotics and decided to use his own expertise to replace different parts, defective parts of his body because he was diagnosed with MND. And over time, basically, as bits of his body stopped working, he replaced them with technology. So whether it was his stomach or his voice, gradually over time, there were just bits of his body. So he made it his sort of life's work. And I just look at the end here. I didn't know much about him privately, but he says, growing up openly gay in the 70s taught you to think for yourself. This is an interview in 2020. Got very used to feeling that I had to fit. After 40 years of breaking the rules, I'm still saying, let's not do it the way it's been done before. Let's do something different.
Wasn't he nicknamed Cyborg Man?
Yes.
Well, I think.
Terrific story.
Fabulous story. Made a massive difference to the world as well. Weather today. Now, in some parts of the UK, it is hot already. 18 degrees already this morning in some parts. Not everywhere, but in some parts.
So it's expected to be the hottest day of the year so far. Temperatures up to 34 degrees. In England, Andrew Plant is in Somerset, and Andrew, well, look at that! What a perfect setting! It almost looks like the open sea there, but swimmers in the water there. Explain where you are.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet this morning, guys. It is still a bit chilly here, actually, in Clifton, but you can tell we're going to get there. You can see it's going to be a beautiful day. The sun's out. There's barely a cloud in the sky. You might be able to see where we are, actually. That's Clifton here in the background there. Right on the horizon, that's actually Wales. You can just see Newport in the distance, nice on a clear day. And this is Clifton Marine Lake. This was finished in 1901. I've just read on the sign nearby. It's supplied by salt water, so it's a saltwater swimming pool, really, but it protects the swimmers from the tides and the waves at the sea. They're a bit treacherous, but people come out here. You might have seen it on BBC News before, actually, because it's often where we come to film on the New Year's Day swim. Lots of brave souls coming down here on January the 1st to take what I'm assured is a refreshing dip. The water is very cold, but still lots of people turning up here this morning to come and take their daily exercise. So we're not there yet, still a bit cold here this morning, certainly wasn't 6 o'clock, but we're expecting sort of 27, 28 degrees here on the west coast, but it's really the east coast that's going to feel the highest temperatures today. Places like Cambridge, Norwich, 32, 33, even we're told 34 degrees in London. So they're really, really going to feel the heat later on today. But this week itself has been a bit of a record breaker already. Wednesday was the hottest day of 2022 so far. Thursday broke Wednesday's record, and then Friday will break Thursday's record. Today, definitely the hottest day of the year, and then things will cool down a little bit. But in terms of overall records, well, we're not going to get there because you have to go back almost 50 years to find the hottest day that June has ever recorded. That was back in 1976 in Southampton. That was 35.6 degrees. So we're not quite going to get there. But in terms of the overall highest temperature ever recorded in the UK, people might remember that because that was just back in 2019. That was in Cambridge, and that was recorded at 38.7. So we're not quite going to get there today, but 34 is not too far off. It's going to start to cool down, some thunderstorms in places on Saturday. So today is the day, and before then we have a very hot Friday ahead for most of us, at least.
Andrew, can I point out the glaringly obvious, which is you seem ever so slightly overdressed compared to the people immediately behind you?
Yeah, well, they're probably a bit hardier than me, Charlie. They're used to this water. I can tell you, I've been in there once. I'm not going to go in again unless you want to see me screaming on live TV. The water is absolutely freezing, but I think it will have warmed up enough for me to take this coat off by the time you next come and see us.
Andrew, we do want to see you screaming on live TV. Did you bring your trunks?
I'll see. I'll see if I'm brave enough.
Go on, you are, you're hardy. See you in the water later.
I'll see what I can do.
Absolutely stunning, isn't it? Really nice. That's coming up later on. Time now to get news, travel and weather where you are.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Cross with your news in the South. It's being claimed some families in the South who have a relative in prison are having to travel more than 100 miles to visit them. Under the government's resettlement prison scheme, long-term prisoners are supposed to be moved to sites close to their homes for the final 3 months of their sentences. The aim is to help them reintegrate into society when they're released. But the Footprints charity, which supports prisoner rehabilitation in the South, says in many cases this isn't happening.
Unfortunately, in 2022, at least 1 in 10 of the people that we receive referrals for in Dorset prisons are going to be released to live in Hampshire and vice versa. So it really isn't working, meaning that families have to travel up to 100 miles to see a loved one.
Well, we've approached the Ministry of Justice for comment, but are yet to have a response. One of the maternity wards at Milton Keynes Hospital was only open for 3 weeks last year because there weren't enough staff. A new report shows that shortage also contributed to 21 drug errors in just over a year, although no babies were harmed by incorrect antibiotics being given or a lack of staff. The hospital has apologised and says it's taken action to minimise risks of similar incidents happening again. A new service is starting in Surrey designed to make it easier for people who are deaf to contact emergency services. It's called 999 BSL and is the UK's first ever video relay service connecting deaf people to the police, ambulance, fire and coast guard via a remote sign language interpreter. And on tonight's South Today, we'll be looking ahead to the 2024 Paris Olympics. One sport that will be making its first appearance will be kiteboarding. The British women's team are busy training at the Weymouth and Portland Sailing Academy. The foiling boards that the competitors use will see them fly along above the water.
Oh, it's super fast with elements of like grace, and lovely tacks and jives. But yeah, high speed, dramatic and beautiful.
Weather now, and with officials across the region issuing health warnings as we're set to bask in continuing hot temperatures today. Let's get the forecast now. Here's Alex Osborne.
Hello, good morning. Well, today is set to bring us the peak of the heat. It is likely to be the hottest day of the year so far, and it's a warm start already this Friday morning. Today it's dry, it's fine, plenty of sunshine expected really from dawn until dusk. Take care though in the strong June sunshine. We have high UV levels and a very high pollen count. Top temperatures this afternoon for some reaching 31 degrees Celsius. For tonight, it's dry and clear at first, then a bit more clouds spreading in from the west later. Another quite mild and muggy night to come with lows of only around 13 or 14 Celsius. But tomorrow there'll still be some sunshine around, especially through the morning for more southeastern parts, but cloud tending to increase as tomorrow progresses with the risk of some outbreaks of rain spreading in later. Still fairly warm, just a bit less hot than today.
We'll be back with your next update in half an hour. Bye for now.
Hello, you're watching Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Monchetti.
Let's see what's coming up this morning on Breakfast. Viva Skeg Vegas, where the new sign based on an old nickname is proving a hit in the seaside town of Skegness.
Do you fancy a glass of Sussex? Wine produced in the county is to be given its own protected status, similar to champagne and Prosecco. We'll find out what it means for the industry.
And a celebration of music, mayhem, and mud. Ahead of Glastonbury's return next week, we speak to the director of the new documentary, which looks back at 50 years of one of the world's most famous festivals.
Inflation rates hit a 40-year high. So we're taking a detailed look at the cost of living crisis this morning and how it's impacting the way we eat, socialise, shop and travel.
So Ben's just outside our studios here in Salford. And Ben, morning to you. You're going to take us through all the different ways that people are feeling the pinch.
Yeah, throughout the morning, we'll be looking at how people are having to make tough decisions on what they spend every single day. Even on a gorgeous day like this, I think we can show you a beautiful shot of Salford Quays. Stunning day, even at this time in the morning. It's warm, kind of day where, I don't know, you may be tempted to have a day off work, or maybe at the end of the day, you may go along and, I don't know, take something off this menu, a passion fruit bramble or an Aperol spritz, perhaps. The reality is, though, people having to make tough decisions about those little treats, and even beyond that, some of the essentials. Let me talk you through some of what we found in this survey that the BBC has carried out. More than 8 in 10 people told us they're feeling worried about the cost of living. That is up from 6 in 10 back in January, and more than half said it's worrying them so much they feel it's having a negative impact on their mental health. So people are trying to cut back and make savings. 6 in 10 told us that they're going out less, so that means fewer trips to restaurants, pubs and bars. And the same goes for socialising with friends and family. 7 out of 10 told us that they are seeing friends and family less. Of course, for places that people tend to gather, like bars and restaurants, that has a real impact if people are going out less. Let's speak to Keith McAvoy, who has a brewery and several bars around Manchester. Are you noticing people spending less, people coming into your places less?
Since the all restrictions were lifted last year, there was a huge spike in people coming in and out of premises like ours. But in the last 6 weeks, I would say yes, there's been a slight decline.
And what are you doing to try and make sure they keep coming back? Are you able to cut prices?
Well, the prices going up for businesses, utilities, services, the cost of raw materials. We can absorb things as much as possible, as much as we can. But at some point, we're going to have to pass that on to the consumer. But we'll do our best to kind of keep prices steady.
Yeah. Okay, Keith, thank you very much. I'll leave you to it. I'll come back for a bit of advice on which tipple to enjoy. Maybe it's a bit early, but a bit later in the day. Keith McAvoy there. It's also affecting other businesses as well. We'll speak to Parrell, who owns look at this spread. Parrell, this looks incredible. Wow. I mean, if I went past the restaurant and saw all this in the window, I'd be very tempted to pop in. Are people still doing that? What, your regular customers, are they coming a bit less to visit?
Regulars are coming a little bit less. We have noticed, obviously, and it's the same thing like when the COVID finished. So when the restrictions were lifted, we were busy. We were really busy at that time, and we noticed it's dwindled down a bit. So we have to keep introducing new things.
But what kind of pressures are you facing as a business? You're facing the same pressures as people in your day-to-day life, but as someone in business, what kind of pressures are you facing on that front?
It's the price increases, utility, raw materials, oil prices have literally doubled. And we use obviously a lot of oil, flour, vegetables, and it's all doubled.
So are you having to double your prices that you charge customers?
We haven't doubled them, but we have had to have a slight increase. We do our very best to keep, we've always done our best to keep the prices as reasonable as possible. But we have had to increase prices. And our customers understand. We've got, brilliant customers that come and they do understand.
Okay, Parrell, thank you very much. Parrell from Lily's Restaurant there. And Rosie is a mum and a blogger. Rosie, if you were going past Parrell's restaurant and saw all this, I'm sure you'd be tempted in. But I suppose the reality is you're having to make tough choices. Give us some examples about how you decide what to spend on, what you cut back on.
be honest, I wouldn't be able to resist this. It's so good. We were just talking about all the ingredients and all the amazing sourced here. I think really it's cutting back on the big things, doing the big shop, and just scaling back that little bit. And then it means you can actually treat yourself to independent businesses and those drinks out. But it is one of those things where it takes planning, and it's not very sexy. It's not very fun to say that, but it's just a matter of doing that. And then it means that these days out can be achieved, and you can support your local community as well.
There'll be parents watching this morning who've got kids pestering them. It's a sunny day. I want to go to the park. I want to have an ice cream. I want, whatever it is. How do you deal with that kind of pressure?
Yeah, I've got a little boy myself, and it's getting to the stage where he really needs to be going out and getting some of that energy out. But I think utilising what your local council has, for example, Warrington Council has some amazing free placements on Saturdays. They also have some great resources as well. Just seeing what your local community has available, your community centres as well, because they are catered to cheap days out and that kind of thing.
And you have a blog which gives people practical advice on ways to save money. Give us, say, 2 tips that people can take away and apply easily this morning.
Okay, I'd say look at your budget, go through itemised bills and see what you can cut back on things like any subscriptions or anything like that. There's a
little fly, isn't there? Sorry, yeah.
There's a little fly. I think it's over here. So I think scaling back on those kinds of things. And then in terms of planning, I'd say get a bit of your meal prep done. Look at how you're eating, any habits, whether it's like getting that takeaway coffee at your not your independent, and then it means that you can put that into things like nice days out and going back to your independence.
Okay, and just briefly, later we're going to be talking about travel. Are you cutting back on travel?
I'm trying to scale back on my trips, yeah, definitely. I don't think you can just pop here and there anymore. You've got to make sure, especially as a mum, it's not just a matter of going out willy-nilly anymore. You've just got to really plan that trip.
Okay, Rosie, thank you very much. And the eagle-eyed among you may notice over my shoulder, I don't know if you can see it, we've got a coach and a taxi there. We'll be talking about travel and how people are saving money on journeys and day-to-day travel. But in the meantime, come back to this table. Just look at all these treats on offer. Carol, if I had to choose just one this morning to take in for Charlie and Naga, and they're going to share, one for them to share, which one would you recommend?
We do obviously do a range, vegan and a vegan.
A vegan one would be good, yeah.
So you've got a choice. You've got all these are vegan. Cashew nuts, pistachio, dates if they like dates and figs.
Okay, well, I'm not taking them all in. That's just being greedy. But maybe we'll pick one. We'll pick one. Carol, thank you very much. Charlie, Naga, we will be talking about travel and also food and some really practical advice on the weekly shop and ways that you can save money without having to cut back too much.
Sounds brilliant, Ben. Can you send a samosa up for me, please? That would go down the tree.
It's on its way already.
Thank you. Look at that spread.
That was very impressive, very impressive. Mike, how are you today?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Yeah. It's nice actually with the golf, the US Open. It felt like normal again.
Yeah.
Yeah, after all the furore, the divisions over the breakaway, multi-million-pound Saudi-backed Rebel Tour. It was, both sets of players, those Rebel players and the players that have shunned the tour so far, the breakaway tour, playing together, the US Open. And Rory McIlroy, well, yeah, he's going well. One of the ones that hasn't yet been tempted by
Probably a relief for all parties, wasn't it? Just to be hitting balls and getting on with it.
Competing as of old, really, isn't he? Yeah, good morning. Rory McIlroy actually says he's in a great place mentally after making a really strong start to the US Open at Brookline. McIlroy arrived in Massachusetts in good form as well after winning last week on the PGA Tour, which he has stayed loyal to. And the Northern Irishman is on 3 under par. Alongside, how about this, a real outsider, Englishman Callum Tarrant, playing in his first season on the tour and appearing in just his second US Open. He's also just one off the leader, Adam Hadwin from Canada, who's on 4 under. Although it could have been McIlroy, but for his last hole.
You'd take 67 around this golf course any day. So even though I'm standing up here slightly frustrated that I bogeyed the last, it's a great start to the tournament. I felt like I did most things well today. I certainly, I putted well and I hit the ball in the right spots and I had a lot of greens, giving myself plenty of chances.
On to football, England's preparations for the Women's Euros are off to a winning start. They beat Belgium 3-0 at Molineux last night. They dominated the game as well. Rachel Davey here with a pick of the goals in the second half. So England are now unbeaten in 11 matches under head coach Serena Wiegman. and they're among the favourites to win the Euros, which start in just under 3 weeks' time. Now, UK Sport and Sport England say they endorse and accept the findings of a report that found that physical and emotional abuse were systemic within British gymnastics. Yeah, the White Review, which was finally made public yesterday, found that gymnast well-being and welfare had not been at the centre of British gymnastics culture. Athletes were made to train with injuries, also punished for needing the toilet, sat on by coaches, shouted and sworn at, and had their bags searched for food. Anne White, QC, made 17 recommendations and said a sports ombudsman would be an obvious step in the right direction. Now, a week ago, it was a case of Ryan Penniston who, but now, I tell you what, the British 26-year-old tennis star from Southend is one of the stories of Queens. He may be the world number 180, but the wild card entry stunned top seed Casper Ruud on Tuesday. Now has beaten Argentina's Francisco Zundolo by 2-1 to reach the quarter-finals now in West London. It is his first appearance at an ATP Tour event. He'll face Serbia's Filip Krajinovic today. 3 British athletes battled it out in the women's 800 metres last night at the Diamond League meeting. Keely Hodgkinson, Laura Muir and Gemma Reekie lined up in Oslo. And it was Olympic silver medalist Hodgkinson who came first. Muir was second, with Reekie a disappointing 8th. Now, hockey will be one of the highlights of the Commonwealth Games when the tournament gets underway in Birmingham next month. But did you know the modern version of field hockey was started actually by a group of cricketers more than 150 years ago?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I've told you now. We're going to find more about this now because I've been to Teddington Hockey Club ahead of a special weekend of anniversary celebrations this weekend.
Okay.
In the footsteps of the founders, the youngsters at Teddington Hockey Club today may be playing a very different kind of field hockey to the one that was started 151 years ago. But there's still something special, it seems, about playing for the oldest club in the world.
I didn't believe it. I was like, that's not true. I was, oh my, I didn't know that.
Many here were inspired to pick up a hockey stick by more recent events.
Holly Webb on her way to win gold for Great Britain. Webb turns, scores!
The Olympic gold medal won by Team GB's women in a thrilling finale at Rio in 2016.
Made me think that hockey is a really good sport and I should play it more. I watched back a clip of that Olympics and the ball was flying around. It just looked like so much fun, and now I realise it really is.
No, it's there. Take it round it.
It just changed my life automatically. I wanted to do it. I just wanted to play.
This gold medal changed my life, my teammates' lives. But then when you step out of the team to hear that it's changing the lives of the youngsters, inspiring them to be active or play hockey itself. As a standout moment at the Olympics was one thing, but to be a standout moment in the history of your sport, it's incredible to be part of, because the game, it's constantly changing. Life is constantly changing. So to be part of it, to shape what the sport is now, yeah, really proud.
It's now believed the modern version of field hockey started just down the road from where the Teddington youngsters are training in Bushy Park, the old hunting grounds of Hampton Court Palace, where the deer still roam free and where Teddington Cricket Club still plays. It was right here at Teddington Cricket Club on the edge of the park that it came towards the end of the season, and the cricketers, well, they wanted to carry on doing something for the winter. So they had the bright idea, dropping the ball onto the grass and, hitting it around with their cricket bats.
The thought that the game that's now played in over 100 countries around the world started right here is pretty amazing. Very quickly, it turned into a proper game, and they set rules and they set parameters to the pitch, and a very different game to what we know now. But if it wasn't for this, who knows? It may not have happened.
Yeah, so they quickly realised they couldn't use their cricket bat. It was too unwieldy, so they made something rather thinner and more pliable. And this one's made out of ash. The original sticks were made out of holly because it was nice and whippy. And that's the sort of tree they've had in the Bushy Park at the time.
Bats became curved sticks over the years, and the sport spread across the world. Played
on grass until a revolution started in the 1970s and the move to artificial pitches transformed the game forever.
Means you can play it all year round. Something that we weren't able to do before. Floodlights came in, so actually access to hockey has become bigger. You don't have games called off because it's raining. Well, I mean, I started on grass, so shows my age. But yeah, it's a different game. It really is.
The techniques have now changed, so it's very much sort of upright on bumpy grass pitches, stick stopping like that,
and hitting almost like a golf ball.
Now the game is all played very, very low, slap hitting.
Yeah.
You know, so you've got to bend your knees, get very, very low to the ground.
Wow.
So that's how the game is now played.
Skills that come naturally to the new generation, it seems, while those returning to the game need to start learning all over again.
Hands together at the top of the stick.
Yeah.
And you're going to sweep through the ball. Sweep it like a brush. Yes, there we go. Okay, Alex, good. Good. Okay, nice and low. Chip under. Yes, good. You let that go in.
Next month, there'll be another chance for the game to be in the national spotlight and to attract more players to pick up a stick.
That's it, Fred. Well done.
The Commonwealth Games in Birmingham with teams from Wales, England and Scotland all competing. And it was at the Games in Glasgow in 2014 that inspired current Scotland and Teddington star Murray Collins.
And I've been playing hockey as a child in Glasgow at the time, and it was amazing to go and watch all these amazing teams and the top teams in the world, and to actually to see that and to witness that, makes it something that feels like a target for the future.
So much has changed, but the basics of the game and that thrill of hitting the back of the goal is still the same as when the first pioneers connected stick with ball.
Yeah, and the next generation. Well, I mean, the Commonwealth Games is another chance to inspire more people to get involved. In just over a month's time, it all starts. Yeah.
What was the verdict on Bushel and hockey from the rest
Well,
of
it
the
came back to me, but very differently. What was very different? The technique. Not what I remember at all. I maybe took a couple of goes to try and beat to know the keeper there, and he was very generous. Letting it slip past him.
I found ankles were always in danger
Well,
when I played hockey.
The way you played probably was it?
Wasn't good.
Over competitive fight.
It wasn't good. Wasn't good.
Yeah,
Thanks,
how I go.
We'll see you later on. Thank you very much.
It's 14 minutes to 7. Let's talk to Sarah. Let's find out what's happening with the weather this morning in a moment.
We'll have a look first at this beautiful image. Now, I know there's a big variety in the weather today, as Sarah will explain in a moment. And so it may be that you're not expecting this hot weather. It's largely in the south of the country. If you're not, well, this is kind of what it's going to look like, Sarah. That was Clevedon in North Somerset. And Sarah, it is looking very hot for some people, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes. Good morning to you, Charlie and Naga. The peak of the heat wave, I think, today across southern parts of the UK. Certainly not the same everywhere, but you think it's hot here. Well, in France, yesterday, temperatures reached 40 Celsius, and that's the earliest in the year that France has ever seen a temperature of 40 Celsius. Paris is forecast to get to 40 tomorrow, but we're not going to be quite as hot here, but we could see temperatures in London around 33 or 34 degrees. So certainly the peak of the heat today, not the same across the UK though, although we've got all that hot sunshine holding on in the south, strong levels of UV out there as well. We've got a different picture further north. So for Scotland and Northern Ireland, it's cooler, it's fresher, rain is sinking south, and it's going to be quite breezy as well. Now, the contrast in the weather down to the fact that high pressure is sitting to the east, drawing in that warm southerly breeze, all that warm air from the southern parts of Europe. But a weather front moving into the north, and that's bringing rain this morning for Northern Ireland and for Scotland as well. Northern half of Scotland brightening up with some sunshine through the morning. But further south across England and Wales, another hot day to come. Temperatures peaking between around about 24 to 33, even 34 degrees down towards the southeast. So very hot out there today, very strong levels of UV and high levels of pollen as well. You'll notice that if you suffer from hay fever. Not as hot though further north with temperatures generally in the mid-teens. But overnight tonight, then that band of cloud, that weather front sinks its way south. Most of the rain tending to fizzle out, but it's the dividing line between the cooler, fresher air in the north, but down towards the south, another uncomfortable night with temperatures sitting in the high teens for some of us. So a humid start to Saturday. We've still got that hot and humid air in the south, but that weather front on Saturday is going to reinvigorate. It's going to bring some really heavy rain to parts of Wales, the Midlands, into Lincolnshire, the southwest of England as well, some thunderstorms mixed in. To the north of that, cooler cooler, fresher, breezy with 1 or 2 showers and temperatures in the mid-teens generally for some of us, but towards the south, 28 or 29 degrees. And once again, down towards the southeast of England. So real contrast in temperature on Saturday. By Sunday, though, we are all in that cooler and fresher air with a northerly breeze. A few heavy showers, perhaps the odd rumble of thunder holding on towards the south, but a fair amount of dry weather and temperatures only around 13 to 19 degrees by the time we get to Sunday. So if you don't like it quite this hot, you'll be pleased to know that during the course of the weekend, then those temperatures dropping back by around about 10 degrees for some of us, and that's between Saturday and Sunday. But for the here and now, certainly I think the peak of the heat wave today, do be prepared for those very strong levels of UV out there today. Slap on the sun cream, certainly. We could see temperatures up at around 34 degrees for some of us. Naga and Charlie.
Good advice, Sarah. Thanks very much. We'll see you later.
Yes, as you heard there from Sarah, talking about the pollen count high, very high in some places, it will come as unwelcome news for hay fever sufferers. Another day maybe of sneezing, itchy eyes and runny noses. Wendy Harrell has more.
A hay fever sufferer's worst nightmare. Pollen whooshing into the air as grass is cut in summer. Because while the sun is shining, insects buzzing around flowers, grasses swaying in a gentle breeze. If you're like me and 16 million others across the country, you'll have a runny nose, a scratchy throat, itchy eyes, and constant sneezing. This hay fever season seems worse than others, even with people who've never had it feeling the irritation. So what is hay fever?
When a pollen grain first enters your body, it is almost immediately met with a bouncer of your
This
body.
is the science bit from the Royal Institution. Basically, it's your body's immune response to something it thinks is harmful. Great when it's a genuinely dangerous disease, not so helpful for fending off tiny bits of innocuous pollen. We're talking hay fever. How is it for you?
It's been awful this year. Like, really, really bad. Like, you can probably hear it on my voice. It's like bunged up, itchy, painful eyes, the lot.
There's a lot of hay fever tablets going down.
But you're still working out in the park. That's the main thing.
I think the tablets, like, managing it helps a lot, but in the mornings it's grim.
Everyone says it feels like hay fever is worse this year. Is that true? And what's causing it?
In order for plants to produce pollen, they expect a lot of dry, warm, sunny days. And then we've had very, very mild winters. So what that does is it means that the pollen seasons this year have started earlier, so we get an increase of pollen.
So we hay fever sufferers must have remedies and tricks. Stay inside mid-morning when the pollen count is highest and run a mile from the lovely lawn maintenance teams keeping our parks tidy. Wendy Harrell, BBC News.
9 minutes to 7 is the time now. A 24-hour rugby match is underway at the top of one of Wales's highest mountains this morning. It's in memory of a man from Brecon who died last year.
Andrew Williams' family and friends have gathered to mark his life with a special five-a-side game and raise money for 4 charities in the process. Our reporter John Maguire is there for us this morning. John, morning to you. It is a dramatic setting. Wow, look at that.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better than this, Charlie, does it? I think we won view of the day on breakfast this morning for sure. On top of Penyvan, 886 metres high, just under 3,000 feet, the highest mountain in South Wales. Of course, we're in the beautiful Brecon Beacons, Brecon just below us there. Look at the view out there, absolutely stunning. And what better way to enjoy a view like this today than to have a game of touch rugby? They're going to be playing for the next 24 hours. Started at 6 o'clock this morning. Started to get a little bit spicy, a little bit feisty out there, didn't it? We're joined by Paul Williams, Gonzo's brother. This is all in his memory by Lisa's partner, by Des Lally, who you may be familiar with in the programme. Paul, first, how's it going this morning?
Yeah, really well, thanks, John. Yeah, we're nearly the first hour in and time's going quicker than we thought. But yeah, good gang of people up here, as you can see. First couple of sides kicking off and yeah, as you said, not getting too taken. I think the latest score update, 18-7 so far. We're keeping tabs on it, but yeah, starting really well. Yeah.
18-17, I think, or something like that. Tell us why this event?
Yeah, so as mentioned, so called Gonzo's Game. We're playing 24 hours of continuous touch rugby, as you can see on the top of Penyvan here. So that's in tribute to my late brother, Andrew Gonzo Williams. local Brecon boy, big rugby fan. Unfortunately, we lost Andrew in last August after a 4-year battle with myeloma cancer and subsequently to COVID. So yeah, we've set up the game in tribute to four great charities who supported him through his battle that were close to his heart, and that's Myeloma UK, Rookwood Spur, which is the spinal unit he had support from, Wales Air Ambulance, and the firefighters charity, him being a serving firefighter.
The firefighter. Lisa, the community have really come together for today and for the last couple of months, I guess. What's that been like? Tell us.
It's been phenomenal. The fire and rugby club community have been just the family that have given us a big hug again just to get through these difficult times, looked after me and the boys and the wider family. Yeah, they've been fantastic, and testament today that they've turned out in mass for the early hours, and got a good crew of them coming through the day to support this event, and hopefully raise some good money for the charities and awareness more than anything. And I just can't thank them all enough for their support through this difficult time that it's been. So
Of course. It's been a great turnout so far. Des, good to see you again. 365 times you climbed this mountain when we saw you a couple of years ago in 2019 in a year. We reckon you've done it about 1,000 times, all inclusive. Is this the maddest day yet on the mountain for you?
Absolutely, mate. Without a shadow of a doubt. You know, it is. And for, as I said, it's going to be a big day in many ways, and there's going to be a lot of big shifts put in over the next 24 hours. But for the charities, as I said already, raising awareness, raising funds, and some memory of Gonzo. So, but as far as things go, the craziest thing that probably most of us will ever be involved in. So.
So what about a score prediction? What do you think it might get to?
Like you mentioned earlier, I think with the cricket on at the moment, it's going to be something like 528 to 490 to the Greens, because I think the Reds are getting a bit of a stuffing at the moment, mate. So
yeah, come on, the Reds have got to win. Remember where we are.
we're going to be the comeback kings.
Yeah. It's all about the Reds. Lisa, how long are you going to spend up here, do you think?
Got a few shifts down the bottom as well as on the top, and a little one to look after. We'll try and get him back up here later. He's in school at the moment, so we've got to do the school run as well. So I'll leave these mad ones take care of the game up on top.
And Gonzo would have enjoyed it, wouldn't he?
Oh my word, wouldn't he just? He's here in spirit with us, and it'd be good to be missing it actually.
All right. Great to see you all. Thanks so much. Diolch yn fawr. Have a great day. As we say, heaven knows what. Man down. Shout out to this fella here in the blue there, Carl. He's the backstop. He's already stopped 4 balls going over the edge. Because have a look. Can you imagine if a ball went over the edge there? It'd be pretty serious if it ended up in the lake, wouldn't it? Back to you guys in Salford.
Thanks very much, John. That is a spectacular location for a game of rugby, as you say. Do you not want the ball to go down the side of the cliff?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What a backdrop. It is time to find out what's happening wherever you are in the UK. We'll be back with the headlines around 7 o'clock.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Cross with your news in the South. It's being claimed some families in the South who have a relative in prison are having to travel more than 100 miles to visit them. Under the government's resettlement prison scheme, long-term prisoners are supposed to be moved to sites closer to their homes for the final 3 months of their sentences. The aim is to help them reintegrate into society when they're released. But the Footprints charity, which supports prisoner rehabilitation in the South, says in many cases this isn't happening.
Unfortunately, in 2022, at least 1 in 10 of the people that we receive referrals for in Dorset prisons are going to be released to live in Hampshire and vice versa. So it really isn't working, meaning that families have to travel up to 100 miles to see a loved one.
We've approached the Ministry of Justice for comment, but are yet to have a response. Unprecedented numbers of people have been arriving at A&E departments in Frimley and Wexham Park hospitals. The NHS is now asking us to think carefully about whether an alternative service can meet our needs. The CCG says a new electronic system introduced over the weekend is also causing an additional challenge. 2 emergency shelters to help displaced families fleeing the war in Ukraine will leave Winchester tomorrow, heading for the border with Poland. The units are insulated and can be configured within an hour of delivery. They include flexible sleeping, living, kitchen and bathroom spaces and could potentially provide shelter for up to 2 families at a time. It's part of the Rehouse project. and it's been used to examine the effects of G-force on pilots for decades. And today, the man-carrying centrifuge in Farnborough is being honoured with a national award. The Institution of Mechanical Engineers Heritage Award recognises the site's contribution to mechanical engineering. The research from it has been used to equip pilots with life support systems whilst flying fast jets. Weather now, and health warnings are in place in parts of the region with continuing hot temperatures today. Let's get your forecast now. Here's Alex Osborne.
Hello, good morning. Well, today is set to bring us the peak of the heat. It is likely to be the hottest day of the year so far, and it's a warm start already this Friday morning. Today it's dry, it's fine, plenty of sunshine expected really from dawn until dusk. Take care though in the strong June sunshine. We have high UV levels and a very high pollen count. Top temperatures this afternoon for some reaching 31 degrees Celsius. Through tonight it's dry and clear at first, then a bit more clouds spreading in from the west later. Another quite mild and muggy night to come with lows of only around 13 or 14 Celsius. But tomorrow there'll still be some sunshine around, especially through the morning for more southeastern parts, but cloud tending to increase as tomorrow progresses with the risk of some outbreaks of rain spreading in later. Still fairly warm, just a bit less hot than today.
Travel and the A283 in West Sussex is closed in both directions between Ludgershall and Ebenow due to an accident. We'll be back with your next update in half an hour. Now back to Naga and Charlie. Bye for now.
Colour, the beauty, the joy of life.
I'm listening.
The secret of life is in art. Art is an improvement on life. And to live is the rarest thing in the world. I'm beginning to enjoy your company.
Passionate performances every Sunday night. Watch on BBC4 and iPlayer.
Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Charlie States and Naga Munchausen.
Our headlines today. The Bank of England warns inflation could rise to 11% this year. We look at the real cost of living and what we're cutting back on.
President Zelensky says Ukraine is closer than ever to the EU, with senior officials in Brussels expected to recommend it as a formal candidate later today.
Good morning. A great start to the US Open golf for Rory McIlroy. One of the players, remember, who's refused to join the breakaway Saudi-backed tour. He's just one stroke off the leading Brookline, looking to win his first major in 8 years.
Good morning. The heat wave in the south is likely to peak today with temperatures reaching 33 or even 34 degrees. Strong levels of UV out there today as well, but it's not the same across the UK. Cooler, fresher and wetter conditions in the north. I'll bring you a full forecast in about 10 minutes.
And we're live in a bracing Skegness, or should that be Skeg Vegas? We're going to be asking if Instagrammable moments could put places like this on the map. Join us later.
Good morning, it's Friday, June the 17th. Today on Breakfast, we're looking in detail at the impact of the soaring cost of living, with the Bank of England warning that the rate of inflation could hit 11% later this year.
Now, the huge rise is being driven in part by events taking place hundreds of miles away in Ukraine, but the pinch is already being felt right here in the UK.
BBC News has asked 4,000 adults across the UK how they're feeling about the cost of living. 8 out of 10 said they're worried about it, with around 2/3 saying it's affecting their mental health. More than half say they've cut back on the food they're buying to cook at home. Nearly 2/3, 64%, are going out to eat in pubs or restaurants less often.
Petrol and household energy bills are clearly a big source of worry. Half of people we asked are using their cars less frequently, while 7 out of 10 say they've turned off appliances in their homes to save energy. Well, with prices rising at their fastest rate for 40 years, household budgets appear to be tightening, as our business correspondent Emma Simpson reports.
Look at house money!
Summertime's here, but for many, the living is far from easy. As
Plenty to spend cash on at this Birmingham park, a family favourite,
No, I don't want one, thank you. No,
but many are cutting back.
Go to the pub less, just to save them where I can, and just probably just have a few cans at home instead.
When you put the oven on, rather than just put one thing in there, you do several things at the same time.
We have to, if we have to survive in this climate, in this situation.
At least the park is free. You've just got to get there.
The diesel is absolutely crippling me. But just looking up here, I paid £1.93 a litre. And compared to what it used to be, I can't go out as much as I used to, not a chance. Using the car a bit less, maintaining it a bit less as well. And yeah, looking for the yellow stickers at the supermarket.
The problem with that is that
Everywhere you go, there are folk wondering how to make the sums add up.
but we never had to watch what we spent in terms of on a weekly basis. Now we're doing it on a daily basis. So
A few miles down the road, this school has decided to make school uniform and PE kit free for all new children moving up from primary in the autumn.
The basics of clothing and feeding your child, families are finding that challenging. I think, it can just be a throwaway comment where just last week a parent said to me, at least I don't have to have the heating on anymore.
So the pressure has definitely gone up.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, we need another ball.
Her pupils know about the pressures too.
We're not spending as much money as we need to, like going out, but my pocket money hasn't. So I'm happy for that.
Making sure the lights are off, turning the plugs off at the switches.
Having to say no to some stuff because they can't afford all the things that I want.
Try and have the good times, have things out, stays out, but try and keep the cost of those a bit smaller.
I just think Rebecca's daughter Jess will get the free uniform for September, and it all helps.
It just means that in the summer we're going to be able to do a few extra little trips out. So yeah, things that we probably couldn't have done if we'd had to fork out for the uniform.
A glimpse of the cutback economy. For many, it's now about staying afloat and preparing for more turbulent times ahead. Emma Simpson, BBC News, Birmingham.
Ukraine's bid to join the European Union is expected to move a step forward today. Senior officials in Brussels likely to approve the country as an official candidate for membership.
Now, in his nightly address, President Zelensky said Ukraine had never been closer to the EU. It comes after the leaders of Germany, France and Italy used a visit to Kyiv to announce their support for the country's application for candidacy. Azadeh Mashiri has this report.
Ukraine's president called it a truly historic day, describing a visit to Kyiv by some of Europe's most powerful leaders. From France, Germany and Italy, three of the Eurozone's largest economies, as well as Romania. And while President Zelensky has grown accustomed to receiving politicians who wish to see the war firsthand, this time he had clear demands, more weapons, and shoring up support for Ukraine's candidacy to the European Union.
Ukraine has felt the support of four powerful European states at once, and in particular support for our movement to the European Union. Italy, Romania, France and Germany are with us.
But up until this visit, President Zelensky had criticized these leaders, arguing they weren't taking a tough enough stance with Russia. President Macron was accused of being too soft with his words, and Chancellor Scholz too slow in cutting off economic ties. Perhaps that's why they were taken to Irpin, a town decimated by Russian shelling. At the end of the visit, France, Germany and Italy's leaders announced their support for Ukraine's immediate candidate status.
All four of us, we support the status of Ukraine's candidacy for immediate accession to the European Union. This status will be accompanied, we have all said, by a roadmap, and also implies the consideration of the Western Balkan states and neighbouring states, in particular Moldova.
Those caveats signalled the long road ahead for Ukraine's accession to the bloc. All 27 member states must agree to its candidacy, and then negotiations would begin on what reforms would be needed. All this must happen without riling the Balkan states who've been queuing up to join for years. Azadeh Mashiri, BBC News.
New research suggests the Omicron variant of coronavirus is less likely to leave patients with long COVID than the previous Delta variant. King's College London looked at data from nearly 100,000 people, logging symptoms on an app. A little more than 4% of those infected during the Omicron wave registered long-term COVID symptoms compared to 10% during Delta.
The first ever Women's Health Ambassador for England has been appointed, a role aimed at helping to close the gender gap in healthcare.
Dame Leslie Regan will take up the position after more than 4 decades working in the sector. She says she intends to use her position to address the inequalities that exist across society.
I think the emphasis I really would like to have is on the things that affect most women all the time, because often they are not talked about. And that's where I think we have the biggest morbidity, if you like, a waste of resources. So many women leaving school or their education or their workplace because they can't cope with their periods, or they're finding the menopause too stressful. So we must do things that are going to actually allow women to get on with their lives.
Now, for many of us, they're the bane of our online lives, those maddening pop-up boxes which ask for permission to store cookies or small amounts of personal data every time we visit a new website. Well, they could be on their way out. The government's published new proposals which would allow us to set blanket permissions for all websites. They're part of the Data Reform Bill, which will also increase fines for companies which bombard us with nuisance calls and text messages.
Everest Base Camp could soon be moving to a new home after officials said global warming and human activity making the current location unsafe. The site, which is used by up to 1,500 people in the spring climbing season, is currently on a glacier that's melting. The government in Nepal said a new camp will be found, but at a lower altitude.
Contrast of those snowy peaks to what's happening in some parts of the country today. Hey, Sarah's going to tell us much more about that. Sarah, morning to you. Obviously, bathing in sunshine down south, not the case for all around the country.
No, that's right. Good morning to you, Naga and Charlie, and good morning to you at home. Yeah, real contrast in the weather out there today. In the south, currently it's about 19 or 20 degrees, beautiful morning sunlight out there. If we could just press pause on those temperatures, it would be ideal. But no, it is going to get a lot hotter. We're going to see the heat wave peaking in the south today at around 33 or 34 degrees. But a different picture further north across the UK. We've got a weather front moving in, and for Scotland and Northern Ireland, that's bringing rain that's going to be sinking south and cooler and fresher conditions there. But certainly further south for much of England and Wales, really hot, strong sunshine and feeling humid as well. We have got some rain across Northern Ireland and central and southern Scotland this morning. To the north of that, sunny spells, 1 or 2 blustery showers. It's going to turn quite windy in the far northwest. But in the south, in that hot sunshine, temperatures 24 to 33 or 34 degrees. It really is going to feel very hot, very sunny out there. A bit more cloud lapping in across Wales and the southwest of England, and fresher conditions further north. This evening and tonight, that band of clouds sinks its way a bit further south, most of the rain tending to fizzle out on it, but it will be the dividing line between fresher temperatures, 9 or 10 degrees across the northern half of the UK, but still around 17 or 18 in the southeast, another humid, sticky night for sleeping. Now, during Saturday, we'll see the hot and humid air still in the south and southeast, but we've got a weather front which will bring some heavy rain, thunderstorms possible for Wales, the Midlands up towards Lincolnshire as well. Temperatures to the north of that only around about the mid to high teens, but again in the south, 29 degrees possible. So another hot, sticky day again through tomorrow. Probably not quite as hot, though, as it will be today, where we're expecting those temperatures in the low to the mid 30s. So a very hot day. If you don't like the heat and the humidity, you'll be pleased to hear that things are turning cooler through the weekend, and it'll be at least 10 degrees cooler on Sunday for most of us. Back to you both.
Sarah, thanks so much. The joy of these mornings is if we take you to North Somerset, Clevedon, and the joy of breakfast and early mornings in the sun is that you see when people get in very early and they have coats on, and then as the day goes on, the layers come off. Andrew Plant is there, keeping cool, getting warm. Clothes are coming off, Andrew.
Yeah, just one layer, Naga, so far. Anyway, the jacket. It's still not quite there yet, actually, in Clevedon this morning. 16, 17 degrees here now, but you can tell it is going to be a beautiful day here today. The sun is already out. There's a blue sky. In fact, it's really clear today. You can get a really good view of, that's Newport in Wales, right in the distance there that we're seeing from here on the west coast. 27, 28 degrees here is what they reckon today, but it's the east of the country that's going to really feel the heat today. Places like Cambridge and Norwich, 32, 33 degrees. In London, possibly by far the hottest day of the year so far, up to 34 degrees later on today. Water bottles at this school in Weston-super-Mare and extra sun cream encouraged at playtimes. Teachers working out ways to help children keep their cool in school today.
We're always thinking about water. They need to keep hydrated, so we're always offering their water bottles to them. They've got access to them during playtimes, lunchtimes, and in the classroom. We advise parents to apply sun cream in the mornings before they arrive at school. We have sun hats here at school. We also promote that to be brought in from home, and we ask them to seek out the shade wherever possible if they're feeling too hot.
On the beach, this family, who usually holiday abroad, kept a careful eye on the forecast and decided they'd holiday here instead.
Everyone's saying it's going to be really hot, so yeah, we thought we'd get the beach done today and then do something a bit more indoorsy or swimming so they can keep cooler.
Stay in the water.
Yeah, definitely.
That will make a change on it. For once, it will be actually too hot to go to the beach.
Yeah, it makes a change. It's not raining.
Too hot, way too hot, yeah. Way too hot. You want to enjoy it. Well, we've got the weekend off, so we'll probably go to a beer garden or something, just enjoy the sun.
Definitely with the children. I smother them in sun cream because we were talking about that, how we've got sunburn over the years and how painful it's been because we didn't have sunscreen in those days.
Yeah, keep them in the shade as
So
well.
yeah, so we're all sun creamed up today. To come,
And I've
come
got a
on.
little bit of hot spot I have to look after.
Several areas are expected to be well above 30 degrees Celsius today. 34 predicted in London, 33 in Cambridge, even 32 in Norwich. That's higher than Tel Aviv in Israel at 29, and even hotter than Athens at a mere 30 degrees. It's not just humans who can get too hot. This animal shelter keeps a careful eye on its dogs too. For Bargy here, that means snacks served in the swimming pool. And for cats like Casper, they even have their own air conditioning unit, meaning even animals in fur coats can keep cool today.
We stop our dog walking at peak times. Our volunteers come and walk our dogs mainly, and possibly we would look at cancelling that altogether because you just need to make it safe, and anyone at home would need to do that kind of very early in the morning or very late in the evening.
As most places see temperatures start to soar, for those lucky enough to be off work, it's barbecues on the beach, sun cream, and maybe even a sandcastle or two as well. Now you might recognise where we are, even if you're not from this area, because this is often where we come to film on New Year's Day. It's basically a saltwater massive swimming pool. It's blocked off from the sea, but it's refreshed by the tides, of course, but it keeps people safe from the waves. They're a bit treacherous here on the west coast, but it's pretty big. It will be packed here today with people using their bodyboards and coming for a swim as well out to that platform there. I can tell you on New Year's Day, I've actually been in here before. It's absolutely freezing. I thought it's a lot warmer by the swimmers here today. That's Clevedon Pier out in the distance there, and as you can see, Wales across there. It's a lovely clear view today. So probably up to 27, 28 here on the west coast today, but it's over on the east coast, as I said before, that you're going to get the really high temperatures, places like Cambridge and Norwich, and down in London as well. But we're not going to really see any major records broken today. In fact, today will be the hottest day of 2022. Wednesday was, Thursday was then hotter than Wednesday. Friday will definitely be hotter than Thursday was, so getting up to around 34 degrees. But the hottest day ever recorded in June, you have to go back almost half a century. That was 46 years ago, back in Southampton, and that was over 35 degrees, 35.6 degrees that day. But the hottest temperature ever recorded in the UK, people will probably remember, because that was only 3 years ago. That was back in 2019. That was in Cambridge, and that was over 38 degrees, about 38.5 degrees. So we're not going to get anywhere near that today, but 34, well, it's really not bad, isn't it? So if you're lucky enough to be off work today, today is the day to enjoy that. We're going to hit some thunderstorms in parts of the country come the weekend, but before then, of course, we've got a glorious Friday ahead.
Andrew, thank you very much. We'll see you later on.
Well, those high temperatures have prompted a level 3 heat health alert is to be issued for London, the east of England, and the southeast.
Let's get more details on what that means, what we should do. Agostina Souza is from the UK Health Security Agency. Very good morning to you, Agostina. And I'm thinking, well, you're probably getting a sense of how warm it's going to get already, just looking at the sky above you. For some people in some parts of the UK, it's not everywhere. It is one of those days when you do genuinely have to be a bit careful.
Yes, yes. As you can see, it's already quite sunny in London, and it is important with this sunny weather and with the good weather that you enjoy it in the first place. It's really important, at least, to enjoy the first really warm weather of the year. However, as we health professionals advise the general population to don't forget about the most vulnerable. Don't forget about your grandparents, your parents, your young children, and even your colleagues or even your friends that have some chronic diseases such as heart disease, lung disease, or kidney disease, because those are the most vulnerable to this kind of hot weather. And even with the level 3 alert, the level 3 alert is more to support our colleagues in the NHS and in the local government association with the different local authorities to really protect these most vulnerable and to prepare the services to possible health impacts that we may observe with this hot spell. So don't forget about most vulnerable, check in our family just to be sure that they are ready to this hot spell in the first one of this year.
Agostina, morning, it's Naga. There's the level 3 alert is for those areas we mentioned before, London, the east of England, the southeast. There's a separate level 1 alert, isn't there? What does that mean? That's been issued for Northern England.
So we have 3 different levels of alert. So the level 3 is more an operational level of alert where we call it heatwave action. So it's to inform our partners that they should prepare their services to possible increases in demand due to the increases in temperatures. We also have a level 2 that is currently active in the southwest and east of England. It's just to inform our partners that they should prepare the services in case they need to enter in action, in case we see even an increase in temperatures. Right now, the situation is stable. As your colleague mentioned before, we expect the temperatures to drop tomorrow, but it's really important to focus on today, where we are going to see the higher temperatures. The level 1 means that although we are not seeing an increase in temperatures, people should still prepare for the summer. So it's not only during the hot spells that you should take care and prepare. It's something that usually takes all year. So it's just a reminder that the hot weather, although it doesn't impact those regions, it may come later in the summer.
Agostina, some of what you do is about common sense in a way, isn't it? About what parts of the day, in those places that are very hot today, like London and the southeast, what parts of the day should you be most careful around when the sun is, if you like, at its most dangerous for us?
Yes, so that's a really important question. We advise people to try to avoid as much as possible to be outside between 11 and 3 p.m. We recognize that that's not possible to a lot of the population, but it's just a strong advice to try to avoid exposure to the sun. And if you need to go out to the sun, don't forget to wear sunscreen. Sunscreen at least with a factor of 30, as some skins require 40 or 50. So we advise you to at least check the label and see what kind of sun cream is more recommended for you. And again, it's not only the sun cream, it's also dress properly for the weather. Try to dress lightly, don't with light clothes. So try to avoid jackets if possible. It's just a matter of avoiding these 11 to 3 p.m. where the temperatures will get.
I'm going to charity shops then.
Agostina, thank you very much for your advice today. Thank you.
I'm going to put some plates and some cutlery.
23 minutes past 7 is the time.
Loads. I'm 52 knives and forks and spoons. Yeah. In a bag.
So this is a
Go get rid of
new neon sign based on the Las Vegas original. Has been erected just outside the town. Is already causing a stir on social media. Jamie, come in. Let's have a look.
It has been the butt of jokes.
but those who love it really love it.
Wahid family, sell Skegness to me.
The weather's been lovely. The attractions have been amazing. I've been to Rhyl, I've been to Blackpool, Skegness. You can't fault it.
Have you been to Las Vegas?
No. I wish.
Well, brace yourself, Wahid. Thanks to the Skegness Raceway, there is a new attraction in town, hoping to pull in new visitors.
We've had a tough couple of years with COVID, so we just thought we'll do this. Skegness Raceway is one of them, or is the first tourist attraction on the road into Skegness. So it's the first thing to see. So if we can put a smile on people's faces before they hit the town, we're all happy.
Did you see the sign coming in, Skeg Vegas?
We did.
Skeg Vegas, are you feeling it?
Yeah.
It's better than the actual Vegas.
Is it?
It's more feeling, yeah. Brilliant. Somebody turned up from Rochdale just to get a picture with the sign, just to come to Skegness for that.
The sign is modelled on the real deal 5,000 miles away. It cost £36,000, but the value of what is fast becoming a viral marketing moment, priceless. Speaking of which,
Oh my God, it's Brad!
let's skip Skeg Vegas and head down to Coventry, shall we? Well, £172 million was invested in the arts during its reign as City of Culture. So after all of that, what was it that put Coventry on the international map? Culture? Cheers. This is what a social media storm looks like. TikTok memes and YouTube videos have sent thousands to Coventry for a bag of chips. Not even Binley Mega Chippy's owner Kamal understands the magic at work here.
I don't know, but I'm loving it. I'm just going to go with it.
Binley Mega Chippy!
We had a busload from 12 people from Dundee yesterday. I was chatting to some people from Newcastle.
It's just funny. Like, it's just the internet. It's just Chippy D. It's just fish and chips.
I can't wait to get up shop.
It is
Oh my God.
so much more than that to Coventry. In the old days, this is what the mad marketeers thought would bring the seasiders to Skegness. The Jolly Fisherman is still welcoming visitors today, but they hope this will bring a few more in. A taste of Las Vegas, but like the sign says, not in Nevada, it's in Lincolnshire.
Well, Skegness, or Skeg Vegas, is living up to its name today of bracing. It is bracing down here, even though it's going to be 28, 29 degrees, would you believe it, later on. So if you think Skegness, you'll think beautiful beach, won't you? You'll think exciting theme park over there. You'll think, Andrew, fish and chips, oldest chip shop in town, ladies and gentlemen. And you'll think, thank you, Andrew, you'll think jolly, 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 jolly to me. Jolly Fisherman. Kind of scary. But let's walk with me, Jolly. Let's meet Tony Ty, the Lord Mayor. Jolly has been the symbol of Skegness, but what, since the 1930s?
1930s.
Are you happy with this kind of rebranding that you're getting on Instagram, Tony?
Well, we're not all altogether happy, but yes, I mean, any branding is good. Any promotion is pretty good.
Tell me what you told me off air before about Jolly.
It's rather naughty at times.
No, I think the word you said
It's scary.
with children.
It can be. Little children. I did a party not long back, and took him along, and 90% of the children were frightened.
Is this what you want for a family resort?
Well, it's not frightening children, no. But he's good. He is good.
You are good. It's nice to meet you, Jolly. Listen, thank you for your time. Stay there. Come and meet James. James, you're in charge of the pier and Fantasy Island around the corner.
Yes.
I mean, this is a kind of modern.
I don't think they know what fantasy
resort.
is.
And how much has
Fantasy is like the real Stone Road run. It's just like, wow.
Skegness is all about coming, having yourself, seeing what's available. And I think opening that to as many people as possible, just let people come and see what it's about, enjoy themselves, and they'll come back.
Somebody last night said to me, if I think Vegas, I think ladies of the night.
I think it's more born from the arcade machines and the flashing lights as opposed to the ladies of the night. But it's about fun, isn't it? It's about fun and entertainment. And I think that's where the sort of the comparison between Skegness and Las Vegas has been drawn, albeit broadly.
And it's good. It's
Yeah,
good
it's
to be
good.
on
Anything
the
that-
map.
Yeah,
Have
exactly.
you been singing Spinning Neckerchief?
I haven't, but my kids have, and they actually wanted me to take them to go for fish and chips. That's maybe slightly extreme to go that far. We've got plenty of good fish and chip shops around here.
Where are the fish and chips? We've lost our fish and chips. Oh, do you know what? Nagger, Charlie, we'll bring some back for you. They're going to be cold. They're not going to look as good as this, but we'll bring some back.
You sold it
Back to
well,
you.
Jane. Sold them well. Thanks so much, Jane. We've been offered all sorts of food this morning, haven't we?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a theme today.
I think that Jolly Fisherman, I think we get there first somehow, fish and chips. He looks like he likes his fish and chips.
Jane was at them.
Yeah.
It's time to find out what's happening where you are in the UK with the news, travel and weather. See you shortly.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Cross with your news in the South. It's being claimed some families in the South who have a relative in prison are having to travel more than 100 miles to visit them. Under the government's resettlement prison scheme, long-term prisoners are supposed to be moved to sites close to their homes for the final 3 months of their sentences. The aim is to help them reintegrate into society when they're released. But the Footprints charity, which supports prisoner rehabilitation in the South, says in many cases this isn't happening.
Unfortunately, in 2022, at least 1 in 10 of the people that we receive referrals for in Dorset prisons are going to be released to live in Hampshire and vice versa. So it really isn't working, meaning that families have to travel up to 100 miles to see a loved one.
We've approached the Ministry of Justice for comment, but are yet to hear back. One of the maternity wards at Milton Keynes Hospital was only open for 3 weeks last year because there weren't enough staff. A new report shows that shortage also contributed to 21 drug errors in just over a year, although no babies were harmed by incorrect antibiotics being given or a lack of staff. The hospital has apologised and says it's taken action to minimise risks of similar incidents happening again. A new service is starting in
NHS are rubbish.
It's easier for people who are deaf to
Look
contact
after yourself,
emergency
right?
services. It's called
Forget
999
the
ESL
NHS.
and is the UK's first ever video relay service connecting deaf people to the police, ambulance, fire and coast guard via a remote sign language interpreter. And on tonight's Saturday, we'll be looking ahead to the 2024 Paris Olympics. One sport that will be making its
I've been to
first
Paris.
appearance will be kiteboarding. The British women's team are busy training at the Weymouth and Portland Sailing Academy. The falling boards that the competitors use will see them fly along above the water.
Oh, it's super fast with elements of like grace, and lovely tacks and jives. But yeah, high speed, dramatic, and beautiful.
Weather now, and officials have issued a health warning for parts of the region as we're set to get continuing hot temperatures today. Let's get your forecast now. Here's Alex Osborne.
Hello, good morning. Well, today is set to bring us the peak of the heat. It is likely to be the hottest day of the year so far, and it's a warm start already this Friday morning. Today it's dry, it's fine, plenty of sunshine expected really from dawn until dusk. Take care though, in the strong June sunshine, you've high UV levels and a very high pollen count. Top temperatures this afternoon for some reaching 31 degrees Celsius. Through tonight, it's dry and clear at first, then a bit more clouds spreading in from the west later. Another quite mild and muggy night to come with lows of only around 13 or 14 Celsius. But tomorrow there'll still be some sunshine around, especially through the morning for more southeastern parts, but cloud tending to increase as tomorrow progresses with the risk of some outbreaks of rain spreading in later. Still fairly warm, just a bit less hot than today.
We'll be back with your next update in an hour at 8:27. Right now, back to Naga and Charlie. Bye for now.
Bum, 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 bum.
Hello, you're watching Breakfast with Charlie States and Naga Monchetti.
Time has just gone 7:33 Friday morning. We're concentrating this morning on the cost of living crisis. As inflation rates hit a 40-year high, we're taking a detailed look at what it's feeling like for you at home and how it's impacting the way you eat, socialise, shop and travel.
So Ben is nipped outside the studios here in Salford, and he's taken a look at all of these issues, looking glorious there, of course. Ben, there's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot to discuss.
There is indeed. Do you know, I feel like I should be offering you tea, coffees, drinks, snacks, light refreshments as I walk along this coach. I haven't got any to offer you, I'm afraid. Forgive me. But what I can offer you is a glimpse into some of the really tough decisions that people are making about what they spend day to day and what they're having to cut back on. It includes things like travel. But let me run you through what we found in a survey that the BBC has carried out. More than 8 out of 10 people we spoke to said that they are worried about the rising cost of living. That's up from 6 in 10 back in January, and more than half said it's having a negative impact on their mental health as well. The cost of petrol and diesel is forcing people to use the car a bit less often. Of course, filling up the average family car now costs more than £100 for a full tank of fuel. And over half of those that we spoke to said they'd cut back on all kinds of transport, be that train, tram, bus, and so on. And the cost of energy is something we speak about a lot on the programme, isn't it? And more than half of the people we surveyed said they are careful to use appliances less often. That's all very well if you are able to make those savings, but some businesses have no choice but to keep using fuel and energy. Following as a coach company, and with me is Sam Nixon from Elite Coaches. Sam, thanks for having us on board. Thanks for bringing your coach down to the Piazza this morning. As a business, are you noticing you're getting fewer bookings, and how do you cope with that?
Very slight at the moment. This moment in time, schools are really struggling to go on school trips. Quite a lot of them are having to go and seek funding from fundraising events, parents associations, etc., which is quite sad because ultimately the children are suffering at school. The cost of fuel for us has risen circa 4,000 extra per week since January.
For how much? For a couple of coaches?
No, for our fleet of 15.
Your fleet, okay. So how much does it now cost to fill up a coach like this?
In the region of £1,000.
£1,000. Can you pass that on to the customers or not?
Unfortunately, we have to, because we've got no alternative. But we are finding that some schools are actually cancelling or can't afford to take the children out, or people can't afford to go on holidays. With us, we operate our own tour programme, and bookings are suffering as a result.
A lot of people go electric for cars, for trucks, for taxis. Is that something? Do electric coaches even exist?
They do actually, and they are starting to be developed. But unfortunately, the technology isn't there yet to allow us all to operate electric vehicles.
Okay, and Sam, thank you very much. Sam Nixon there from Elite Coaches. Well, I did mention taxis as well. We've got a cab is pulled up very conveniently. I'm not sure who flagged it down, but I'm pleased to say John is here with us this morning. John, the eagle-eyed viewers will notice this is an electric taxi. So is that saving you money? Is that making a difference?
Well, initially the electric taxi, yes, saves you money, but the price of electric has doubled. And the vehicle itself is more expensive than a conventional diesel vehicle. So you sort of get hit in both ways, really. The price of electric has doubled. So where you would have bought the vehicle thinking I'm going to save money on fuel and better for the environment, now the price of electric has doubled. So you're still in the same boat. We just don't know what's happening.
Of course, during the lockdowns and the past couple of years, a lot of people weren't going out and about. People are back out and about now. Are you noticing whether you're being flagged less or how's
you don't get flagged as much. There's not as many people out and about in the city. At busy times it's busy, but then quiet times it's really quiet. And on the back of the lockdown, when there was no work at all, it just seems to have never recovered.
So have you had to put fares up?
We can't put the fares up. Our fares are governed by the local council, by Manchester Council. So until they put the fares up and they have to have meetings and consultations to see how much the fares are going to go up, we just don't know where the end of it is. That's the hard bit.
And when when you're being squeezed by your costs going up and you can't put your fares up, how do you survive as a business?
You just have to work more. You just spend more hours in the cab.
So the more time you're spending in the cab driving around, the more energy, more fuel you're using.
It's just a no ends winner, aren't you? Just what can you do?
And when people are in the cab and they're talking about the cost of living pressures, what comes up more often? What's the thing that people are finding hardest?
People are finding shopping is difficult, isn't it? Transport costs are going up. Everything's going up, but it's the speed that it's going up as well. That's what people say, how expensive things have got so quickly.
Okay. And John, thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming down this morning. I just hope you've not left the meter running while we've been chatting. That's the last thing that I need. John mentioned there the cost of the weekly shop. We're actually going to be talking about that a little later in the programme, and some really useful, some practical advice on ways that you can save money, perhaps without cutting back too much. It is a gorgeous day here out in Salford Quays, outside the BBC Breakfast studio. And a lot of the pressures that people will be facing on a day like this, today people should be out enjoying it, being able to spend money. The reality is a lot of people don't have that extra money to spend. They'll be finding pressures from their kids, perhaps asking them, I want an ice cream, I want to go and do this. We'll be talking about how you can deal with that and some really, as I say, practical advice to help you with those cost of living pressures.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, definitely give us an impression of just how every little bit of sort of everyday life is being affected in all sorts of ways. As Ben said, the weather for some people is very nice today, so that comes free, as it were, Mike. But also,
What's it like out?
entertainment. I was going to say, you know, sports entertainment, that gives people pleasure.
Exactly. It was very entertaining at the US Open. Nagra, have you ever hit a turkey in golf? Not a birdie or an eagle or an albatross, but a turkey.
Not deliberately.
Ah, yes, you got it. Maybe basically that was one of the highlights of the opening day. To be honest, good morning, for most of us, it was just a relief.
Can you explain?
Oh, you're going to see it in a moment.
Oh, okay.
I was a little tease. The turkey was a tease. Okay. And if you stay watching, that's the idea.
All right.
Stay watching.
I'm watching.
You'll find out about the wild turkeys in a few moments. Yeah. Come on, it is a welcome relief, though, for golf to be finally focusing on the sport and maybe the wildlife again after the controversy of the Saudi-backed breakaway tour. And it does feel a little bit more like normal that it's the players who've stayed so far loyal to the PGA Tour who are making the early running at the US Open. Notably, Rory McIlroy, Jelinsky reports.
This is Rory McIlroy in 2022, more serene on the greens and more emphatic.
First birdie of the day if he can make this.
In the last 12 months, he's won twice on the tour. Now at the US Open, it's a major he wants most, and it shows. That kind of emotion can spoil a round, but not here. With 3 under par, McIlroy's in contention, chasing a first major since 2014, when he won 2 of them. 8 years on, golf is changing. McIlroy's been a critic of the Saudi-funded Rebel Tour. He was asked if a win here would be one for the good guys.
I'm just being me and living my life and doing what I think is right and trying to play the best golf that I possibly can. I mean, I wasn't asked to be put here. I wasn't trying to be in this position. I'm just being me.
McIlroy's been to the summit, but Darlington's Callum Tarrant is 445th in the world. On his way down to Boston, his airline lost his clubs. With them back, he played the round of his life. He's up there as part of an English charge, with informed Matt Fitzpatrick and Justin Rose. Now they have to turn heads for 3 more rounds.
Gobble, gobble.
Brookline's Wild Turkeys get the best view of the birdies. At this intriguing US Open, there is so much to watch out for. Joe Linsky, BBC News.
There we are. Charlie got to see them in the end. Now, with less than 3 weeks to go before the Women's Euros start, hosts England continued to impress, beating Belgium last night 3-0 at Molineux. They dominated the game. Rachel Daly with the pick of the goals in the second half. England are unbeaten in 11 matches under head coach Serena Hiegman now, so really impressive. They're among the favourites, understandably, to win the Euros, with only 2 more warm-up matches to come. Now, Britain's new tennis ace, Ryan Peniston, says he just doesn't want to wake up at the moment. He's absolutely living the dream at Queen's. He may be the world number 180, but the wildcard entry stunned top seed Casper on Tuesday, and now has gone and beaten Argentina's Francisco Zundolo by 2-1 to reach the quarterfinals in West London. So he's 26, from Southend. He's making his first appearance at an ATP Tour event. And it wasn't to be a record-equaling 4th Gold Cup at Royal Ascot for Stradivarius and Frankie Dettori. It was a thrilling finish, though. So Dettori took his star-horse wide in a bold move to try and make up the ground, but they just couldn't finish 3rd, with Mojo Star 2nd. And it was victory for the favourite Kyprios, who amazingly made it 8 Gold Cup wins now for trainer Aidan O'Brien. And there was disappointment for Her Majesty the Queen, who couldn't actually attend in person but was watching it on TV, and her big favourite, Reach for the Moon in the Hampton Court Stakes, came in just second. But Her Majesty's experienced enough to know the economy was being amazing. Take two on the chin.
Back to the Queen's thing, it's interesting, isn't it, in tennis, where you get a player who suddenly has momentum, like a moment in time, and then confidence is, you can literally see
nowhere.
someone change.
An unknown before Queens, and suddenly now get a wild card to Wimbledon as well.
Yeah.
Can he do it again today?
Fingers crossed. Hope so. Yeah. Time now is just coming up to 7:45. You've heard of champagne and Prosecco. Can you imagine saying, I'd like a glass of Sussex? Well, wine produced in the county is to be given its own protected status. It means that it could soon become a recognised international label.
Local winemakers say the move will help guarantee the quality of the alcohol produced by the vineyards in the area. Sarah Smith has been finding out.
It's a sight which is increasingly familiar. Vineyards covering the south-facing slopes of Sussex. English wine has established its reputation over recent years, and now the very name of this county will carry with it a guarantee of quality. The idea is that you could walk into a bar in New York or Tokyo and ask, in the way that you might for a glass of champagne or Rioja or Chianti, for a glass of Sussex. And by doing so, you'd know the grapes were grown here and it was made here to a very exacting standard. At the Rathfinney estate near Alfriston, they want to show the world that what they produce here is worth seeking out, and they've spent years working with neighbouring winemakers to get the protected status.
It means it's grown from grapes in Sussex, with our excellent sort of soils, excellent weather, and also people. So we've got a huge amount of skill in Sussex, excellent winemakers. So that's sort of the first side of it. The second side is quality.
Only wines tested by an independent panel of experts will be able to use the Sussex label.
I think this designation will help selling this product abroad. It helps to show that the region where the wine originates is really special and the way it is produced is regulated and controlled to make the product that people really value.
For winemakers, this is all part of the ongoing development of English wine. A sense of place is increasingly important to those who buy it.
At the moment, under English wine, it can be a bit complicated to know exactly where the grapes are grown, where the wines are made, and sort of the story is not as transparent. So it does help to add that sort of potential quality, but also the story of each region can start to differentiate. So this is one of the first appellations that has been added in England, so it's very exciting actually.
And the hope is more areas, including Kent, will follow, adding to the reputation of the wine we produce here with a guarantee of quality which can be recognised around the world.
I feel like from those vineyards there, that it's a great story, in terms of English wine, isn't it? And then beautiful scenery and sunshine, it's obviously good. And then there's more. Many places today.
I know Sarah Smith was reporting now. I know Sarah was saying, that it's going to get this name. Can you imagine saying, I'd like a glass of Sussex?
Over time, if it became a thing, just become normal, wouldn't it? Just become normal.
Yeah, I suppose so. Let's take you to Clevedon in North Somerset. Beautiful, isn't it? Don't really need to say much over that. Hazy blue skies. Temperatures are warming up. There are people out swimming this morning in the salt water. We'll get more on that with Andrew Planter a little later on. He's going to take you dipping his toe in too. Need to be mindful, it's not warm everywhere, but it is extremely warm in some places. Sarah, morning to you.
It is indeed. Yes, morning to you, Naga and Charlie. Good morning to you at home as well. Well, yesterday we saw temperatures up above 29 degrees here in London. Today we are expecting the peak of the heat wave. So it's going to be not just the hottest day of the year so far, but by quite some way. We could see temperatures today 33 or 34 degrees. So not just the heat, but also really strong sunshine, really strong levels of UV out there today as well. Not as hot though as it is further south across the continent. In France, Paris is likely to see 40 degrees by tomorrow, but not the same everywhere across the UK today. We do have those real contrasts in weather conditions. In the south, of course, much of England and Wales seeing that hot sunshine, very humid as well, but it's cooler and fresher further north as the weather front brings rain that's moving further south. So rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland with that weather front, but high pressure drawing in those warm southerly winds across much of England and Wales. A bit of a wet day to come for parts of Northern Ireland and central and southern Scotland. That rain drifting its way south, so sunshine and showers in the far north, but further south for much of England and Wales, lots of blue sky, lots of strong sunshine out there. A bit more cloud lapping in around the coast of parts of Wales and the southwest of England. But temperatures between about 24 to 33 or even 34 degrees across parts of England and Wales, typically only about 15 to 21 for Scotland and Northern Ireland. So a day of contrast. As we move through the overnight period, that band of cloud will sink its way south, most of the rain tending to fizzle out as it does so, but it's the dividing line between cooler, fresher conditions in the north, 9 or 10 degrees overnight, but still around 17, possibly 18 degrees in the southeast. So another fairly sticky night for sleeping, but humid out there. Through the day tomorrow, we're going to be seeing that divide again with hot and humid conditions in the far southeast, cooler, fresher air further north, and the weather front in between, bringing some heavy rain for Wales through the Midlands, Lincolnshire as well. Could be a rumble of thunder on that weather front down towards the southwest of England, for instance, as well. In the southeast, 28 degrees or so possible once again, but further north, a contrast with those temperatures sitting in the mid to high teens. By the time we get to Sunday, that weather front will have cleared to the south, bit of rain for the gardeners in the south, but I think a much cooler and fresher feeling day. So temperatures by the time we get to Sunday between about 13 to 19 degrees. Still some showers lingering in the far south. But if you're not a fan of this heat and humidity, you'll be pleased to hear that between Saturday to Sunday in the south, we'll see a drop in temperature between about 10 degrees or so. So it is turning cooler over the next few days gradually. A relatively short-lived heat wave for us, but do bear in mind that it is going to be very hot in the south today and very strong levels of UV, high levels too of pollen out there today. Charlie and Naga.
Sarah, thank you very much.
Weather for festivals, Glastonbury, you think muddy Wellington boots, don't you? Slight contrast today. Glastonbury should have celebrated its 50th birthday 2 summers ago. But like most other major events around the world, the pandemic put the celebrations on hold.
So what that means is finally next week, Glastonbury is making a return and a new documentary charting 5 decades of the festival is aired to mark the occasion. Have a look.
With just £1 per head to come in, and they didn't even cover the show actually. And my band members all like gone totally mad.
My parents probably were well aware of Woodstock and all the other festivals that had taken place around that time. But our festival was very basic. It was like a village fete. Crickpot really was one of those kind of big festival moments to inject the event with a kind of new energy. And that's what's happened throughout the history. You can just see it, you can point it in on a timeline, you can just see when those massive changes happen and when it suddenly turns into something else.
Glastonbury is a reflection of what is going on in the music game at that time. Britpop had its moment, and then Oasis had their moment.
So it was scary, and there was a lot of pressure, and there was a lot riding on it, and yeah. But inside me, my spirit is saying, you are the headliner. You are the Glastonbury headliner Friday night.
Remember that moment well. We're joined now by the documentary maker Francis Whately. Francis, morning.
Good morning, Charlie. Good morning, Ned.
This is not a chronological look at Glastonbury, is it? Like what's happened. This is about the spirit of it and how that has evolved.
That's right. It's I've sort of divided it thematically rather than chronologically. So although we do cover from the very beginning, from the 1970 festival right up to 2019, we do it much more in terms of themes. So we start actually with, I think, one of the standout moments for the festival in the 1980s when Michael Eavis joins forces with CND. And with the late Bruce Kent, actually, who, as you probably know, died last week, which was very sad. But Michael Eavis wanted a purpose for the festival. So he got in touch with CND and decided and asked them whether they would like to be given lots of money from his festival. And of course, they said yes. So the story is that he took £20,000 down on the train to give directly to Bruce Kent. which made Bruce pretty happy.
There are lots of. I mean, do you think you have to go to know with Glastonbury? Because most people watch it on TV, don't they? And then I've never been. You haven't to Glastonbury either.
Never been.
And you know, people who go say it's the best thing they do all year. It's their moment. It feeds their soul. So do you have to have been there to know it properly?
I think you do, because much as I think the BBC coverage is great, it is only a very small part of what that festival is about. So you see the Pyramid stage, you see the other stage, you see Lauren Laverne, you see Joe Wiley doing their thing, and you see a few other stages, but a vast amount of what goes on in Glastonbury is not filmed. So you don't really get a sense of the atmosphere and all the rest of it.
Some of that being, as we're looking at some of these pictures now, the social elements of it, the arrivals, the people you meet, and I guess just all of that stuff, the community that's built for just a few days in time.
I think that's right, because you are sort of isolated from the world. For those 3 days, you are in another world, like a Disney world, and I think someone calls it an adult Disneyland, and I think that's about right. So for those 3 days, you can be a different person. And I think that's what's so good about it, is that you can do whatever you want, wherever you want, and there's an area for everyone, whether you're in the kids' fields or the green fields or Block 9, which is part of what now is known as the Naughty Corner.
Really? What happens in Block 9?
Oh, you'll have to go. You'll have to go.
Well, I haven't got tickets for this year, so you're going to have to tell me.
Oh, well, it's in the film. A bit of it's in the film. So these two sort of geniuses called Gideon Berger and Steve Gallagher started a thing called the NYC Down Low, which was based on a gay club in the 1970s. And that's part of Block 9, is this gay club, which is said to be one of the best gay clubs in the world. And then beyond that, there are other areas in Block 9 where you can dance and enjoy the night.
Now, we there was some clips of artists who have, performed there. Yeah. And I know that we've interviewed artists before now who are very big stars, and then they get the invitation to do Glastonbury. And however big they are, it's like, wow, this is a moment in time. There's some big names over the years, and it's taken a while, and then they're there, and then it feels like a big deal.
I think that's right. So in the film, we have this moment when Stormzy's told, and although he's performed at Silver Haze, he's performed on the other stage, when he's asked to be the headliner, it means an enormous amount, because I think it's part of all our sort of DNA in Britain, isn't it? So whoever it is, whether it's the Stones or Bowie or Stormzy or Dua Lipa, it's a really, really big thing. And a lot of them have their most memorable performances of all time, whether that's Radiohead or Dolly Parton, or indeed Stormzy again. They are the standout performances of their entire career.
But also, inviting Stormzy was a reflection on how music was changing and being more inclusive, because it was the first time Brian had appeared on that stage.
On that stage, yes.
And actually acknowledging the music as well. And so, and Glastonbury's been responsible for quite a bit of that as well, just like reflecting the newer trends and what people are interested in.
I think that's right, because at Silver Haze in 2016, there was a big grime stage and a sort of grime weekend. So a lot of those artists, including Stormzy, performed at that time. And then, yes, I think what Glastonbury's so good at is reflecting society. And sometimes it's ahead of the curve, sometimes it's slightly behind, but normally it's doing quite well at reflecting both the music industry and society at large.
And one of the things you referenced a moment ago, you mentioned Dolly Parton, and that was when was that? How long ago was that now? It was a big deal,
but it was a really big deal. Yes, Dolly Parton.
And that was one of the joys of it, was you walk however far it is, and it's a big place, isn't it? Over there, and there's Dolly Parton performing there, and then over here you're going to see something entirely different.
Yes.
And there's someone doing poetry, or
yes.
2014, my producer told me in my ear, so 2014, Dolly Parton.
Right, okay, 2014, yes. And she performed a song that she wrote. I mean, this is an indication of how big it was for her. She wrote a song called Mud, especially for the festival to recognise. And I don't think it was muddy that year, but yeah.
That mud thing, it must be, and I guess you probably talked to quite a few people who've been there over the years. It's like a badge of honour, isn't it? To have been there the year when. And we all remember the pictures.
I was talking to your floor manager just a second ago, and she was there in the Radiohead year, the really, really wet year. And yeah, I think a lot of people had an utterly miserable time. My dubbing mixer also was there that year, and she said she spent the whole 3 days in tears because there was nowhere to sit down.
But you'd just embrace it, wouldn't you? You'd just be muddy. You just say, I'm muddy, I'm going to stay muddy. I'll be muddy for 3 days, and then
3 days is a long time to be muddy at
it's
work.
absolutely miserable.
It's stories, isn't it? It ends up being stories. It does. It ends up being a story you tell for the rest of your life.
How many times have you been?
I've only been 3 times. So yes, I'm not a veteran like a lot of people in this film. So yeah, so I can't go back. I can't say that. Yeah, I was taken there as a child.
What do you make of the lineup this year?
I think it's fantastic, isn't it?
We've got so many. I mean,
You've got Diana Ross, you've
yeah.
got Kendrick Lamar, you've got Billie Eilish, and you've got Paul McCartney. So in Billie Eilish, you've got the youngest ever performer, and in Paul McCartney, you've got the oldest ever performer, and then you've got Kendrick on Sunday night. That's pretty good, I think.
And if you, given what you've seen and what you know about the Glastonbury over the years, someone's watching us now going, do you know what, I've never really got it. Maybe I haven't watched any of the coverage. Well, there would be people like that. I think it's kind of something, really do that interesting. How would you enthuse that? What would you say?
Well, I think I saw some of the footage that is in my film now in the old days, and I thought, I am never going there. I never, ever want to go to that festival. It looks utterly dreadful. But the first time you go, you realise it's not quite like that, and it is actually magical. And I think, you can relax, you can have a massage, you can have a drink. And as I say, there are so many different areas that you can go to that there is something for everyone. So you're never going to be bored, and you're always going to have memories and stories to tell your friends.
And you're able to watch it from your sofa as well.
And you can watch it from your sofa
From the comfort of your dry, non-muddy sofa.
A dry. I think the forecast. I mean, your forecaster can tell us, isn't it meant to be good?
We don't look ahead that far because it can
risky,
change. It can always change.
It is.
Your documentary, Glastonbury, 50 Years and Counting, on BBC Two, this Sunday at 9 p.m. That's right, I think.
That's right.
On BBC iPlayer, of course, for 30 days beyond that. Nice to see you this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Headlines are coming up.
Lucy, know your position. I know my place. Go, Lucy, go.
My place is with the greats.
Up next, Nat Sever, the innovator.
My place is first place. My place is first place.
Our place?
It's here.
Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Munchausen.
Our headlines today. The Bank of England warns inflation could rise to 11% this year. We look at the real cost of living and what we're cutting back on.
People are spending less on food on the weekly shop as the cost of living pressures take hold. They're also spending less on travel and going out less often too. I'll look at some of the tough decisions we're all having to make about what we spend day to day.
President Zelensky says Ukraine is closer than ever to the EU, with senior officials in Brussels expected to recommend it as a formal candidate later today.
There was a scandal that shook America and brought down a president. 50 years on from Watergate, echoes still ring around Washington.
Good morning. Marvellous McIlroy makes a strong start to the US Open. Rory's just one shot off the lead in Brookline, looking to win his first major in 8 years.
Good morning. Temperatures have been on the rise through this week, and today we're likely to see the peak of the heat wave in the south, with temperatures as high as 33 or even 34 degrees. Not the same right across the UK. Cooler, fresher and wetter weather expected towards the north. I'll bring you all the details coming up shortly.
And Borodar from the summits of Benavan, almost 3,000 feet high. We were 2 hours into a 24-hour charity rugby match, and we've only lost one ball over the edge. That's not bad.
Good morning. It's Friday, 17th of June. Today on the programme, we're looking in detail at the impact of the soaring cost of living. The Bank of England has warned that the rate of inflation could hit 11% later this year.
The huge rise is being driven in part by events taking place hundreds of miles away in Ukraine, but the pinch is already being felt here in the UK.
BBC News has asked 4,000 adults across the UK how they're feeling about the cost of living. Now, 8 out of 10 said they're worried about it. Around 2/3 say it is affecting their mental health. More than half say that they've cut back on the food they're buying to cook at home. And nearly 2/3, 64%, are going out to eat in pubs or restaurants less often.
When we look at petrol and household energy bills, they're clearly a big source of worry. Half of the people we asked are using their car less frequently, while 7 out of 10 say they've turned off appliances in their homes to save energy.
So prices are rising at their fastest rate for 40 years. Household budgets are tightening. Our business correspondent, Emma Simpson, has more.
Look at hers, Mummy.
Summertime's here, but for many, the living is far from easy. There's plenty to spend cash on at this Birmingham park, a family favourite.
Mum, I don't want my thank you now.
But many are cutting back.
Going to the pub less just to save them where I can and probably just have a few cans at home instead.
When you put the oven on, rather than just put one thing in there, you do several things at the same time.
We have to, if we have to survive in this climate, in this situation.
At least the park is free. You've just got to get there.
The diesel is absolutely crippling me. But just look up here, I paid £1.93 litre. And compared to what it used to be, I can't go out as much as I used to, not a chance.
Using the car a bit less, maintaining it a bit less as well. And yeah, looking for the yellow stickers at the supermarket.
The problem with that is that
Everywhere you go, there are folk wondering how to make the sums add up.
but we never had to watch what we spent in terms of on a weekly basis. Now we do it on a daily basis. So
A few miles down the road, this school has decided to make school uniform and PE kit free for all new children moving up from primary in the autumn.
The basics of clothing and feeding your child, families are finding that challenging. I think, it can just be a throwaway comment where just last week a parent said to me, at least I don't have to have the heating on anymore.
So the pressure's definitely gone up.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, we need another ball. Her pupils know about the pressures too.
We're not spending as much money as we need to, like going out, but my pocket money hasn't, so I'm happy for that.
Making sure the lights are off, turning the plugs off at the switches.
Having to say no to some stuff because they can't afford all the things that I want.
Try and have the good times, have things out, stays out, but try and keep the cost of those a bit smaller.
I just think Rebecca's daughter Jess will get the free uniform for September, and it all helps.
It just means that in the summer we're going to be able to do a few extra little trips out. So yeah, things that we probably couldn't have done if we'd had to fork out for the uniform.
A glimpse of the cutback economy. For many, it's now about staying afloat and preparing for more turbulent times ahead. Emma Simpson, BBC News, Birmingham.
Well, Ben is just outside our studios here in Salford and taking a look at this. Now, Ben, constantly, the questions we ask to those in the know, those at institutions, at heads of companies, is how much longer do they see this lasting? We've had comments today as well from the boss of Tesco.
Yes, we have, and it just reflects the pressures people are facing. The boss of Tesco, as you say, saying that as a supermarket, they've seen a change in customer behaviour. They don't know how long food prices will stay as high as they are or continue rising, but they're noticing, for example, people are going more often but buying less each time. Perhaps people are just waiting for the next paycheck to come in order to be able to go and do their shop. I'm outside the BBC Breakfast studio this morning. I've got some treats, some steam, and even a couple of aubergines there as well. And reality, people having to cut back. They smell. Also,
okay, Ben, we're having a little bit of problem with your audio there. So what we're going to do, Ben's taken us through the veg and he's about to take us through the other bits he's going to go through as well. He's going to take a closer look at the cost of living with various guests as well this morning and the issues in terms of following that survey we did at the BBC, issues that people are facing and how they're changing their lifestyles in order to be able to cope with the rising costs. So we'll get more from Ben at 8:30.
Let's see, time is 7 minutes past 8 now. Let's move on to other news this morning. Ukraine's bid to join the European Union is expected to move a step forward today. Senior officials in Brussels are likely to approve the country as an official candidate for membership.
In his nightly address, President Zelensky said Ukraine had never been closer to the EU. It comes after
You're probably
leaders
wondering
of
what I'm
Germany,
doing.
France and Italy
I'm
made
sharing.
a visit to Kyiv to announce their support for the country's application for candidacy. Azadeh Mashiri has more.
Ukraine's president called it a truly historic day, describing a visit to Kyiv by some of Europe's most powerful leaders. From France, Germany, and Italy, three of the Eurozone's largest economies, as well as Romania. And while President Zelensky has grown accustomed to receiving politicians who wish to see the war firsthand, this time he had clear demands, more weapons, and shoring up support for Ukraine's candidacy to the European Union.
Ukraine has felt the support of four powerful European states at once, and in particular support for our movement to the European Union. Italy, Romania, France, and Germany are with us.
But up until this visit, President Zelensky had criticized these leaders, arguing they weren't taking a tough enough stance with Russia. President Macron was accused of being too soft with his words, and Chancellor Scholz too slow in cutting off economic ties. Perhaps that's why they were taken to Irpin, a town decimated by Russian shelling. At the end of the visit, France, Germany, and Italy's leaders announced their support for Ukraine's immediate candidate status.
All four of us, we support the status of Ukraine's candidacy for immediate accession to the European Union. This status will be accompanied, we have all said, by a roadmap, and also implies a consideration of the Western Balkan states and neighbouring states, in particular Moldova.
Those caveats signalled the long road ahead for Ukraine's accession to the bloc. All 27 member states must agree to its candidacy, and then negotiations would begin on what reforms would be needed. All this must happen without riling the Balkan states who've been queuing up to join for years. Azadeh Mashiri, BBC News.
Let's talk to our correspondent Jessica Parker, who's in Brussels for us. Jess, good to see you. Ever closer to the European Union. President Zelensky, careful not to say closer to joining, but this is what is expected, or at least the pathway to be made more easy.
Yeah, so what we expect today is a recommendation from the European Commission, which is sort of the executive arm of the EU, to approve Ukraine to gain what's known as a candidate status. Now, this all sounds a bit processy, but it's basically the first initial step on a long road to potentially joining the European Union. But it is a long road. As we were just hearing, there are countries, notably in the Western Balkans, who have been in that kind of waiting room for years and years and years. And what countries have to do in order to become a member of the EU is meet all sorts of legal, political, constitutional, economic requirements. And that's why it can take a long time. So this really is just an initial step. And what we then expect to happen is for EU leaders, including Emmanuel Macron, Olaf Scholz, who were in Kyiv yesterday, they're meeting next week here in Brussels, where they will discuss the matter, and we expect it to be signed off. But as I say, a long road ahead. But I think for Ukrainians, they will see this as an important political moment. But there are people within the European Union who are a little bit skeptical about this, because they worry that while it's good to give Ukraine a morale boost and hope at this stage, if in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, not a lot of progress has been made towards membership, that could leave people feeling disillusioned.
Jess, thanks very much. Jessica Parker there for us in Brussels.
New research suggests the Omicron variant of coronavirus is less likely to leave patients with long COVID than the previous Delta variant. King's College London looked at data from nearly 100,000 people logging symptoms on an app. A little more than 4% of those infected during the Omicron wave registered long COVID symptoms, compared to 10% during Delta.
Now, for many of us, they're the bane of our online lives, those maddening pop-up boxes which ask for permission to store cookies or small amounts of personal data every time we visit a new website. or they could be on their way out. The government's published new proposals which would allow us to set blanket permission for all websites. These are part of the Data Reform Bill, which will also increase fines for companies which bombard us with nuisance calls and text messages.
Everest Base Camp could soon be moving to a new home after officials said global warming and human activity are making the current location unsafe. The site, which is used by up to 1,500 people in the spring climbing season, is currently on a glacier that is melting. Government in Nepal said a new camp will be found at a lower altitude.
It's 13 minutes past 8. Let's find out what the weather has in store for us. So, Sarah, I think, we have to be mindful, don't we? There'll be lots of people saying, yeah, it's hot. Lots of people who, particularly in cities like London, will be saying, this is going to be a nightmare for me getting into work. And there'll be others at other ends of the country going, what's all the fuss about? It's just average for us.
Yeah, that's it. It's really different depending on where you are out there today. Good morning to you. We are looking at some very hot weather on the cards through the course of today. It's already pretty warm here in London, temperatures above 20 degrees, but the peak of the heat wave is likely in the south today. So we are expecting temperatures as high as around 33 or even 34 degrees, probably somewhere to the north of London, perhaps Cambridgeshire as well. So yes, some very hot weather, not just the heat, but also some very strong UV levels, really strong sunshine as we approach, of course, the summer solstice, which is just around the corner. But it is not the same across the UK. We've got real contrasts in the weather. So much of England and Wales have got the heat, the hot sunshine, the humidity, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, a different picture. Rain pushing its way south, bringing the cooler and the fresher conditions there. So we've got some rain this morning already across parts of Northern Ireland into central and southern Scotland, edging its way south. To the north of that, there returns of sunny spells and just a few blustery showers. But further south, much of England and Wales, long spells of sunshine. A bit more cloud around some coastal parts of Wales and southwest England. But temperatures today between about 24 to 33 or even 34 across England and Wales. The hottest weather always towards the southeast and parts of eastern England as well. But further north, only about 15 to 21 degrees. So real contrasts. Into the evening hours and overnight, that weather front pushes its way further south. Most of the rain tending to fizzle out, but there will be a band of cloud through Wales and the Midlands as well. Now, to the south of that, still really hot and muggy, 17 or 18 degrees overnight, but further north, much more comfortable for sleeping, 9 or 10 degrees. Into tomorrow, then, we've still got the heat and humidity holding on for the southeast corner, but for much of the UK, it's a cooler, fresher sort of day. Where those two air masses meet, though, heavy downpours through Wales, perhaps southwest England into the Midlands and Lincolnshire as well. Some thunderstorms possible too. Still 28 degrees or so, though, in the southeast, but much cooler conditions across the northern half of the UK. And if you don't like the heat and the humidity across parts of southern England and Wales, you'll probably be pleased to know that we have got some cooler weather that will be moving across the UK by the time we get to Sunday. So a fairly short-lived heat wave, but today is going to be very hot. Charlie and Naga.
Sarah, thanks very much. So let's go from your forecast to see what that actually looks like. And we go to Somerset, North Somerset. This is, it's what a lovely setting. That is, this is a marine lake. So looking out
wow.
to the estuary there across the Wales. I think.
Oh, there you go. Because it's 3 hours and 10 minutes. 3 hours and 12 minutes.
Location and a good place.
Oh my God.
Stay cool.
And it's 8:15. I'll go to the shop.
Isn't it? Yeah, we're getting closer here this morning. It was about 12 degrees when we turned up here at 6 o'clock this morning. It's getting higher and higher, though, nearly 20 here.
Getting higher and higher. Oh no.
Blue skies, the sun is out, it's looking great and really clear today. As you said, you can see all the way across to Newport in Wales there. This is the marine lake.